Hi, everybody. I'm Aurora. This class is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Today, February 12th, 2025. Sometimes I don't know exactly what I'm going to do in my curriculum when I send out the invite. So when I sent it out last night, I hadn't yet decided because sometimes I can do either a level one choice of curriculum or a level two choice of curriculum because of the way that I have the class kind of mishmashed into one cohesive group that I used to have separate. I'm bringing up my notes right now. So I decided to do level two, lesson one, and it's, level two, lesson 11. And it's all about planetary ascension, a refinery of light, and a refinery of personality. But I really have to get my notepads of the things that I am still prohibited from being able to talk about effectively. And although I have somewhat worked within that system and we all kind of laugh about it and have almost normalized it, I'm definitely out of patience with that. Did a very wonderful little podcast, informal talk that I shared on my Patreon with a friend and fellow musician. And it was so liberating. I did everything directly through Zoom and then uploaded through Vimeo. So, of course, bypassing probably where you are presently watching this video. And we use all of the words that I don't usually talk about. And it's been very refreshing also to be able to speak about things openly on the platform that is currently known as X, that used to be Twitter, and much more so on Facebook. Hardly ever socialize on Facebook anymore now. I mostly share things from the social media world of X to be able to bring it to the social media ecosystem of Facebook, where people don't always know about those things. Much, much more transparency and open conversation. Let me turn on more lights. It's a very dark and rainy, not very nice day today. Turn on some more lights. These things up here at the top, just much more of an open conversation about that and how those related to the implantation of this stuff, which develops into this stuff in the presence of this stuff. And this place where I share with you each week, not here. So, of course, right now I'm doing a Zoom class that is live and that is not yet archived. But for the people that are catching the archives, that's why I'm always limiting what I'm able to say. And I'm really definitely out of patience with that. And just would like to give, the weather report. Oh, yeah, I'll get to your question in a moment, Tom. Of course, thank you for being here. The energetic weather report about what is going on in our larger social collective and how things are developing and what's actually happening. So, of course, the things that I spoke about with my friend that are on my Patreon are largely about the things that we see unfolding around us, where, like, basically you cannot trust the supposedly authenticated voices of journalistic media. So that would be places like AP, Reuters, CNN, the New York Times, BBC, all of those places that human culture looks at as sources of truth and information. It is recognized that all of those have been hijacked through a complex network of money laundering and corruption and fraud, and also even into what is known as alternative media, which are a lot of the things, the channels that you will see like on YouTube, but also in some other places too. And that you can't always trust the people that have a voice on social media platforms, because the social media platforms were not only controlled in terms of certain voices being suppressed and certain voices being elevated, but also controlled in terms of some voices being rewarded, like paid for the work that they do. So that could be through Google's AdSense or various payments that can come through on Facebook and Instagram, or to a lesser extent, TikTok, because TikTok was controlled by China. But I think that you guys have to start looking at this. And I'm not really talking about traditional secular politics in what I share with you here. I'm trying to contextualize the deeper cosmic abstract truths of what I share in your world of anthropomorphic current events and politics. But I don't think that you can look at your various segregated or discrete nation states as having unique leadership. I think that all of the nation states' leaders are assimilated into the organism or organization that has this as its agenda and that uses this type of technology to be able to create a united narrative in the world, as opposed to allowing any level of self-determination or freedom. So I think that when you look at world leaders and when you look at other people in the world, you don't know at this point who or what is acting through them, like whether they are a native soul in a human body acting out of free will, which is, of course, what we would want to see when we see a biological appearing human container, or whether it is a biological body that has been somewhat overtaken by this type of stuff and may have a proportion of their free will or a proportion of their own consciousness still available to them, or whether they are a formerly human biological container that has been completely assimilated through various different forms of implantation into a level of consciousness that I can't actually say is consciousness. It's like into no consciousness, into no thought, into non-being, because they've like unexisted themselves by joining something that doesn't actually exist. But that might be a larger conglomerate of non-existence. I guess these words are very, very hard to bring to you here. I'm trying to articulate something that's hard, but it's the no thing that non-exists, that because you're like this, you're like, why would a person ever want to become a no thing? Like a person is a thing, a person is a person has personhood and existence. Why in the world would they want to like have something grow inside of them and lose who they are and join in something that is the epitome of nothingness? And the answer is, I don't have an answer for you on that. People are bizarre and make bad choices. I don't have an answer. So, it's not always effective to ask why questions, but simply to observe that. And that is, really one of my standard ways of being able to navigate through this place. And so, of course, like you guys all know me, but I sometimes just, reaffirm for people who are new or watching my videos for the first time. So, of course, you guys are native humans and I'm an otherworldly visitor, and I've come here and some things have become normalized in this world, but they are not normal or correct or the way that your world is supposed to be functioning at all. And a lot of what I'm trying to do is to highlight those things and to recognize that that there is an alternative and that there's a way that it's actually supposed to be going. So I'm here in solidarity with you also in order to navigate an impossible seeming situation that we will get through this. And the topic of today's regular curriculum is all about ascension. And so a lot of what I talk about is ascension, not merely as a spiritual ideal or something that is happening from an anthropocentric viewpoint, but as something that is mathematical and something that is part of the larger currents of time. And that what you're experiencing is a hijacked, diminished, or delayed ascension with this type of stuff that really started in 2019, but really intensified in 2020, and then became really unbearable in 2021. And that critical juncture of 2019 to 2020, like we were supposed to be really moving forward into levels of self-empowerment and self-exploration as it comes to learning about your ability to manifest and learning about your ability to directly affect and create the world around you. And this really does relate to the events that I was just talking about when you see this new DOGE external independent auditory organization that has been erected. Cheeky's here, let's hug Cheeky, in order to find and root out waste that might be in the United States government. Here, Cheeky. Cheeky's wearing a sweater because it's chilly today. She needs a little hugging and reassurance, and she's not feeling that happy because she goes on strike when it's rainy. She's like, that's it, no fun, and nothing fun is happening today. Just staying warm in sweaters. Aw, she needs a little bit of hugging. We did go outside for 5 minutes. Okay, thank you for having a brief Cheeky break. Everybody loves you, Cheeky. You're great. But that Department of Government accountability that is going on, that also relates to questions of who or what is, I wouldn't say in charge of, but has claimed authority over or is active in your planet. I mean, when you look at this painting behind me, I know the lighting isn't perfect, but there is the planetary structure up here, and the central figure is transforming into a flying rainbow lasagna. But you see all these other faces around it, and people have often interpreted this painting in, wildly different ways. It's why you make art. And I want people to have their freedom of interpretation. But I will tell you with my words, I, as an artist, did not intend for this to be perceived as a bunch of aliens are controlling or initiating Earth's ascension. No, 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 no. No, on every level. So, because I know, well, just to do art history, if we're in art class right now, in art history, in the mid to late 20th century, it was most accepted and validated for visual artists simply to put forward a visual self-expression where the only words regarding the piece of visual artwork are what is written on the small descriptive plate next to the piece. So that would be its title, its media, and possibly a brief description about it. That might be a few lines. So it's actually not normal to have to be, as an artist, come forward and say, "This is what my art means. Please listen to me." And whatever, artists may or may not struggle with that when I think about some of the meaninglessness that is in some of a variety of visual self-expressions. But don't get me started on Rothko, guys. But I am coming forward in this moment where artists are somewhat required to talk about our work, because now we have social media and websites and other things, and many places where you have to write about yourself as an artist and what your work means and why it is important. So I come to you with my words here in order to say that I am not trying to portray Earth's ascension as something that is owned by aliens. No. Or started by aliens. No. An alien doesn't wave its magic wand and be like, poof, Earth planet, now you get to ascend. No. Or the necessity of aliens being around your planet in any way while you're ascending. No. If anything, those guys are hangers-on or looky-loos that are just kind of clustered around. They are very fascinated by the events that are happening here. And when you start to comprehend multidimensionality, faster than light travel, and the many different time wars that have been going on, and the things that are woven into your DNA that might make you affiliated with various different cultures that come from various different star systems, then you start to see that there is, you're part of a larger narrative that's going on. But what is the power dynamic? Is it like someone else owns Earth? And they're like, "Yeah, nice planet you got there, kid. I get to take whatever I want from you. And also, nice ascension you got there going, kid. Would be a real shame if someone knocked it over, stomped all over it, did a bunch of bad things to it by, for example, locking everybody in their houses, making them live in fear, and making everybody have this come in and this in their neighborhoods, that way you can't ascend properly." Like, none of that is okay. And that is not what is supposed to be going on. So please claim back your power. First of all, ascension is an inevitability, and it is innate in the shape of what your chakras are. Now, I know that this sculpture has fallen and is a bit broken. Don't let that distract you. There's lots of places where it needs to get fixed, or I need to make a new one because it's very fragile. But just focus on the sense of this shape representing cosmic truth at a variety of different levels, from the super microscopic and also the super abstract, all the way up into your scale as a human being, all the way up to what a planet is, what a solar system is, and even what a sun and a star system is or are. That all of those consciousnesses are following this template of experience. And I'm going to draw it for you. Just so this is the third dimensional viewpoint. Let's go to the two-dimensional viewpoint, or shorthand. Sorry, I have to focus. I can't always talk and walk and do things at the same time. My brain is a little overloaded today. And I'll get to your questions, I so promise. Okay, so first, let's just draw a picture. I'll use these colors that you can actually see, because if I use yellow, like sculpture, I think you can't see it effectively. So you've got cross-section of that toroidal energy field over there, right? And now let's do a slightly different color. Let's do here, like green. So green down here is your birth, and that's where you start. And then let's do This giant purple dot represents singularity, even the singularity would be like the tiniest little dot imaginable. And I often make that a figure 8 because that is infinity, but it's not the end of the journey. And then let's do a blue line so that you can kind of get a sense of the energy comes outward from this central source convergence point, 0th dimension location, and it goes up and around like this. And then it actually doesn't start over here. That's like the flaw since Atlantis, but that's not where it's supposed to start. It's supposed to start right here. And you're supposed to be like a runner at the beginning of the race. You start right here. And then this is, we'll use purple again, your central core timeline. That is the timeline of being an ascended master. And in ancient / concurrent Atlantis, that pathway is what everybody took. In fact, that is really the only pathway. And if I draw this very well, even with these digital tools, this is purple going in this direction, and there's purple going in this direction, and there's purple going in this direction. And that is really the only truthful timeline. Like, I'm going to make a little spiral so that you can kind of get a sense of like, here's a person going up this timeline. That's really the only timeline that exists. And there is a perfect mirror image of that person here in a different realm, different parallel, multidimensional existence, and same thing spiraling in from here, and same thing spiraling in from here. And when everybody spirals into the middle, they don't stop. It is actually an endless inward journey that looks like, let's just get a different color, spiraling outward. So this spiraling inward, spiraling outward is exactly like what a laser is doing. And of course, this is part of a larger apparatus because there's another one that's over here and there's another one that's over here. So it's part of a whole big giant, like I could keep on drawing this for forever. And that's what my drawings are like, just creating these big giant grids or networks of where you have oscillations of energy being emitted and energy returning. So this is on the very, very most abstract and correct level of being. Consciousness energy emanates from here and it comes out into the physical world and then it emanates back. That's the curriculum for what we're talking about today. And the concept of ascension is that there's really only one pathway to do this. And this is not something to be argued with. This is not something to be argumentative. It is something just to accept it is, that there is only one correct answer. And I'm kind of like this. I'm like, don't argue with me. Like, don't shoot the messenger. Like, I'm just here telling you the truth. I didn't even make any of this stuff up. Like, I'm just telling you what is already in existence. Definitely it was made by a divine genius, and it's an amazing, perfect system. Now let's talk about death and what the putis are. So choose a different color, yellow. Where I'm drawing this line in yellow, we call that the membrane of death. And that is where you find the putis. Now let's find a doo-doo color. Here, doo-doos. Like here's a pile of doo-doos, right? And that represents stuck energy, stuck emotional consciousness, or some aspect of something that once was alive. And that's presumptive, but that's what we presume, that it once was alive, which means circulating around in here where there are timelines that are habitable. And then it went horribly awry in the wrong direction, and it went here. And this is a membrane of death, which is like, you would say, reconciliation or showing you the truth. A very, very strong waterfall of energy that shows you what is truthful or untruthful about your life. But somehow they got stuck there. They still haven't learned or figured it out, and they are completely unrecalcitrant. And also they cause blockages because as other people's energy, like here's some other energy that's like, going up here in this direction, went in the wrong direction. Now it's driving on the membrane of death. It's on the highway to death. And it hits that membrane, hits that blockage over there, going in this direction, hits that blockage. And then it gets stuck there. That those blockages or that constipation in the flow of cosmic energy is harming many other consciousnesses. we start with this to begin to comprehend that your life is really intertwined with all of these other aspects of life on the highest levels of soul. Like we're not talking about on the stupid ego levels or even on the levels of machine interfaces, AIs, and the different species or factions that promote them. We're really talking about on the highest levels of consciousness. Because when I do my class and I'm like from 10 years ago, who I was from 10 years ago, then I'm like, we're all part of the same consciousness. But when you ask me about things from right now, I'm like, you need boundaries. You need boundaries because there's doo-doos and poops and things that shouldn't be here. Okay. So, but on the highest levels of consciousness, all of our lives are interconnected, and even a person's death or the bad math that they do is interconnected with the lives of other people. And it's not acceptable to be screwing up other people's math, to be messing up them on their journey as they're attempting to correctly navigate that shape and to be correctly aligned with their perfect timeline that leads them to be an ascended master and leads them onward towards eternal and continued existence. So part of cosmic law is that we exist in a state of pure freedom. And when that is functional and correct, then you can be like this. Hey, I do me, you do you. You want to smash into the membrane of death and, do your math all wrong. And even being stuck there like an eternal turd, be like, fine, you do you. I don't want to be a part of it, but you do you. You're free to do that. And then I am free to be on these perfect timelines that go directly to ascension. And in a pristine system, that would be enough. Okay. Again, I give so much credit to the original architect or the great designer, who is an amazing genius of creating all of these shapes that I paint, all of these, the concept of all of these perfect harmonics. That's what we talked about in class last week, visual and auditory harmonics. We're really talking divine genius. We're really talking like God, divinity. And yes, you will remember this as yourself when you get to higher levels of personal development and you're able to expand your identity all the way up there, back there, or out there to encompass that moment of creation where you're like, oh, that was me. I did that stuff. Yes, you did do that stuff. It's not an imperfect, flawed, or inadequate world, but it is a world where the cosmic laws up into, let's say, 2001 were not being promoted or expanded in a just way. There was injustice. There was imbalance in the math. If you looked at the math, you would say, this equation doesn't work. This part over here doesn't fit with this part over here. These puzzle pieces over here don't fit with these puzzle pieces over here. That is messed up. Yeah. And that is what I did from my cosmic viewpoint as Aurora. I looked at all those things and I was like, something is messed up. And I was not like in a position of total happiness and comfort. Things were not okay in the higher dimensional realms that I live in. Things were very, very out of balance there because of the imbalances, the stuck energy on the membrane of death. So hat tip to Pedro, as always. He's a long-term student, and he came up with the acronym, the POOTIS, Pootis, those pesky occupiers of the interstices. And that's what I call them, just so that we can avoid calling them demons. And for many years, I was like, so tiptoey. Like, I'm being very, very nice. Let's not call them demons, but they're demons. I'm like, it's such emotionally loaded language, but it's worth it. They're demons. They're very, very wrong and naughty. And so you can also look at them as like poor innocent damsels. Like, help us. We're stuck on the membrane of death. Like the end of that movie, The Fly, or something like that. Like something that's like a horrible grotesquerie. And it's like just like help me. No, they are not that. They are very happy to be what they are. Not that they're happy where they are. They're suffering and making an enormous amount of suffering. But they're like, we chose this, and that's what has been the huge education to me, because I'm always like, oh, like you poor horrible grotesque monster, like let me entropize you. And they're like, no, not please don't. I like being stuck here like a big giant turd that refuses to go down the toilet of the cosmic infrastructure. So it's we're being silly and using humor in order to talk about something that is both incomprehensible and also quite inflammatory and should enrage you quite a lot, because those guys don't just mess people up in their death journey, they've also been messing up the ascension process. They have been absolutely messing up the ascension process. Those pooties are absolutely connected to this type of hardware. And if you were to look at life like some kind of a competition or a video game. And I think that's actually very corrosive to look at life through that lens. Those are both anthropomorphic lenses. It's not accurate. It's not a totality viewpoint. It's very misleading. So please don't do it. But if you were to look at it in that way, then you would say, well, ascension is it's much more accurate to say it's a refinery. That's how I've got it written in my notes, that ascension is a refinery of consciousness and is more about refining whether you are the correct shape and moving in the correct trajectory than anything that would be considered a moral or an ethical quality inside of you. Even though I speak to you about morality and ethics all the time in terms of cosmic law, but the morality and ethics that radiate from cosmic law come from the perfect math. So it's like 1 + 1 = 2. Don't argue with that. So as a result of that, these behaviors are correct, these behaviors are not correct. So in, the going through the time field, you want to be where my pen is, right? Like the path of mastery, path of least likelihood. And if you're going to the side like this, like you are going down the wrong road. That's it. It's not like saying, moralistically, I'm defining, I can't even use the words. But it's not about moralism. It's just about whether you are shaped like this or shaped like this. That's it. And that's the math. But the shape of going like this or the shape of going like this does have different qualities of existence or does radiate different qualities of behavior. So being like this and how we were in ancient concurrent Atlantis, continually connected to divine consciousness, continually connected to the source of all that is. What that felt like in ancient concurrent Atlantis is we did not have to eat or use food as an intermediary because we were so directly connected to the sustenance of pure light and pure consciousness that we did not need an intermediary. So now we're here in the curriculum that's from 10 years ago that stands. That's beautiful. That's all about our beautiful plants and I want to say brothers and sisters that are here on the planet that are plant family, photosynthetic beings. That's everything that's in the plant kingdom. And, I have this beautiful plant that is literally like right behind my computer here. So that way, like I'm talking to the computer a lot during my day, but that way I've got the plant over here who's an actual nice, alive, like real being. You're real beings, but my computer is not a real being. So my energy field of my body wants to connect with the energy field of a plant. A computer is not an alive being. But plants perform in this level of reality a very, very critical aspect of sustenance, which is transforming light into matter. And we need matter at this point because we have been genetically modified by the pooties and we cannot eat light directly. But we are on the journey of ascension, which means, oops, a thing just fell. Hold on a second. We are on the journey of ascension, which means we are flying rainbow lasagna-ing, transforming our DNA back to factory settings or the optimized form for who and what we are. And that means we return to being light eaters. So before I go any further, because I tend to just kind of run on, let me go to, I have to kind of look at the chat. I have it off to the side so I don't get too distracted, but let me go to this. Tom says, can you give a brief description of level 1 versus level 2, perhaps focusing slightly more on what makes level 2 different? Oh, so way back in the Wayback Machine, I used to do my class where it was a 2-hour-long class, and I would do level 1 for the first hour and level 2 for the second hour. And I didn't do a lot of extemporaneous stuff. I just stuck to the curriculum. And mostly the way that I described it as level 1 is like when you are in physics class and you're just learning about the shape of what an atom is and what are subatomic particles and very, very, very basic foundation concepts. And that's like learning about what this shape is and what are the meaning of the different colors of the rainbow, How does that relate to the chakras of the body? How do the chakras relate to your DNA behavior? And how does DNA behavior relate to flying rainbow lasagna? Just foundational concepts. And I developed that curriculum first. And then after I had students who had done the first curriculum and I kind of got used to what their questions are and what needs to be expanded upon for them to learn, I developed the advanced class. So that was the first I did the, introductory stuff. And then the next year or two, I developed the advanced curriculum in response to what people were asking about or what they needed to know more about. And so the level 2 stuff is meant to run parallel to the level 1 stuff and to be a greater explanation, like advanced physics of what's going on. Once you master the basic concepts of what I'm presenting to you, to then turn it into or move it into something that is greater levels of application and the meaning and the significance of what you're experiencing. So like I have a teaching in level 1 about the Merkaba and what it is and the flower of life and the flying river lasagna. And then I have a teaching in level 2 that goes further about what is the Merkaba and about using it for interdimensional travel and how it relates to your crystalline body and perception. But along the way, after teaching for many, many years and amidst the challenges that we face as a human society and as a collective, at a certain point, I was like, nobody has time to just do the beginning class and then the advanced class. Like, you guys need your lasagna to be operational ASAP. And so I just mushed everyone together. And so, yeah, that's what I used to make people do. First, do the entire year of the beginning class, then do the entire year of the advanced class. And of course, I always invite everyone to come back for any level of the class for both years. But I realized that that was not effective because you guys needed to get like super up to speed, super fast, and to be able to just make everything available to everyone. So that was what I did. So I combined the entire curriculum, and then also you can tell from how I do class now, 1 hour for one of these whiteboard. The whiteboards are the basis of the class. I hope that people are accessing them. So each whiteboard is 2 half-hour whiteboards, all right, or half-hour segments. So theoretically, I could get through it in 1 hour if I never stopped, made a joke, responded to any questions in the chat, or was silly at all. And you know that all those things are going to happen. So I have changed also the way that I do my presentation, where I choose either level 1 or level 2 for me to focus on each week that we get together in a live lecture. And then I've expanded it to 3 hours because there's things that I want to talk about that are not a part of the original whiteboards. And it is why I do these. If it was just enough for me to have, I call it like canned stuff, like pre-recorded everything, I would just be doing the backstrokes, swimming along and say, oh, it's time for class. Just put on the pre-recorded blah, blah, blahs that I've run for all of the other years. And you guys can just watch the pre-digested stuff. But we're not in a normal world. Of course, I like the work that I do. I don't want to just be swimming around doing nothing. And also, you guys need guidance about what's going on right now, not just a pre-recorded, pre-digested template that was appropriate for possibly many years ago, but is not appropriate now, because you not only have all of this stuff that's going on, but then you have the stuff that's going on in current events. That's why I want to also read some more of these comments, because you're seeing what I'm talking about. Everything that I teach about in this class is relevant to all of the present levels of both spiritual struggles or battles between light and dark, battles for personal freedom and for sovereignty and for attainment in your ascension, and then all of the very valid 5 senses reality inhibitory structures that are attempting to be an obstacle between yourself and ascension, to either stop it or to slow it down or to limit it in some way. And that's what's going on. I'll get to more of these wonderful comments. But if you could imagine, like, here is the earth, and then here is the sun and the stars. And then there's something that comes between you, literally like up above your head, like you have this beautiful crown chakra, which is also directly analogous to your DNA. And that is your way of connecting to divinity. And you could think of it as, here's the earth, and then here's the star up here. and you're trying to connect to the star. Let me just hydrate. I have some wonderful juice over here. Or like, sun gazing with the sun. And there are many things that are between yourself and the sun right now. Some of them are particulates in the atmosphere. Some of them are things that have come inside of the human biology that prevent the full expansion of your consciousness, activation of your pineal gland, and even DNA activity that makes it possible for you to oscillate and do the lasagna. So there's not just dead, stupid obstacle, like, imagine whatever, a big boulder, like you're going along on the road, and there's this big, giant, stupid boulder, and you might be like, hey, stuck, get out of my ascension pathway, big, giant, stupid boulder. Like that would be one thing, but it's not just a big, giant, stupid boulder. It's kind of a semi-intelligent or somewhat self-aware group of consciousnesses similar to the Pushis, but not exactly the same. But these guys are not good and they are not self-actualized, meaning they don't get all of their energy directly from the sun and the stars. If they did, you would be like, hooray, hug me. You'd be like, hooray, you're my family of light. You get all of your energy directly from the stars. And they would also be like this. Here's how you can tell your direct light family. They get all their energy directly from the sun and the stars. They don't need to eat or use physical objects, and they don't need anything from you. That's very, very big stuff. You can't imagine. It's like being so rich, you don't need money from other people. But even in this world, you have people who are so rich, they still need $5 from you. And I'm calling out lots of billionaires who have these different companies that might be whatever, like, Elon Musk has X, and you still have to pay $8 to have a subscription to X. You could say, like, technically, like, that guy has enough money. He doesn't need your $8, but somehow he needs your $8, right? Okay, so that's just all joking aside. I'm sure we'll refer to him quite a lot as we go through this conversation. But the guys or conglomerate, I'm calling them guys, whatever that stuff is that is standing between you and your ascension as a type of boulder of consciousness in the road, is they should be in ultimate generosity, where they're like, I'm a billionaire, I'm a higher dimensional being, I have everything I need, I don't need anything from you. Like, why in the world would I steal your ascension energy? That's what they should be like. That's what I'm like. I don't come here in order to get energy from you guys. Although I love it when you love me. And I love it when you support me energetically. And I love it when, what is that? What's the distinction? Like when you give in your own generosity and you're like, we love Aurora. And you're like, we love your paintings. We love your artwork. We love listening to you. Or we shower you with attention by coming here into your class. That's like, those are all really beautiful things. And I love and adore that. And I always receive it with so much gratitude. But I will tell you guys, and I'm not out of gratitude, but I would lasagna whether or not I received energy from you guys. In fact, I go to the grocery store and I get groceries and I give them out to you guys. So what are the groceries? Cosmic ideas and levels of energy. And so I get the energy and the new patterns and the ideas. And I'm like, here's energy, new patterns, and ideas. And then you guys are like, thanks, Aurora. We like this energy, new patterns, and ideas. Like, here, have some love, have some appreciation, have some recognition. I'm like, that's beautiful. What I described is actually, this is part of the curriculum, what you're supposed to be doing with the sun and the stars. That it's a beautiful rapport between musicians where you have the galactic center. Like, if this is the galaxy. And at the very, very center, you have the galactic supermassive black hole that is the ultimate conductor of the ultimate orchestra of light, right? And that supermassive black hole is a profound consciousness that sends out information to every single one of the individual stars. And each of the individual stars is an individual conductor in their star system. So your sun right here is the conductor of your solar system, and then sends out ideas in the form of pure light, possibilities and probabilities and time to you in your light body. And you receive those possibilities and probabilities, and you literally eat them on the level of your light body, which is not the same as eating a sandwich, but there are commonalities. And then that time, as it comes inside of you and you ingest it or you eat it, it runs through you, it sustains you, you change and transform, you grow and evolve, and you reflect back to the sun your appreciation and your gratitude in the form of the reflection of your consciousness. And this is essentially what sun gazing is. you guys might have thought that I was talking about something at the end of your life. Like you live your whole big long life, the sun doesn't know what the F is going on, and then you die. And you're like, okay, sun, good to see you again. Here's what I did with like my past, whatever, 30, 40, 50, 60, 75 years. And the sun is like, that's a fascinating life. I wish you had told me about this sooner because you wouldn't have died. Because I, as the sun, would have been like, look, looks like you're about to die. Let's write a better story for you so that you don't have to experience that. So no, what I'm talking about is the ideal relationship with the sun happens as the daily solar cycle. That as the sun is coming up in the morning, you do your sun gazing, which does not have to equate to staring at the sun, but some people are experts and they do look at the sun's disk. But you can do it in whatever way feels comfortable for you, including simply you can just keep your eyes closed and bathe your face in the sun. And the key point is that you are using your tendril of attention, your mind, to reach out to the sun and to receive all of that sunlight and energy into you. And when you do that, you're getting your directives for the day. That's the morning coffee meeting with your boss. Boss is your son. Your boss is the sun. Sorry, your boss is the sun, and it's like, good morning. Okay, employees, let's get together and figure out what you need to do today. You receive all of your information and directives. Then you go through your day. And then as the sun is going down, you should sun gaze again. And that one's really important. And it should be kind of restful. Like I usually would do something like putting on my headphones and sun gazing and just being in a receptive mood where I kind of talk to the sun and I'm like, okay, like here's how my day went and here's what I accomplished. And the sun receives that. And the sun is able to create a calculation between what it sent out, what you received, and what it is receiving back. And that is how the sun can recalibrate in the moment, as opposed to having to wait 30, 40, 50, 75 years to be able to know how the sun needs to recalibrate. And the sun is very flying rainbow lasagna in its non-locality, but this is how you can comprehend the expression of death. Like if you sun gazed and were part of the solar consciousness in this directive position all the time, the sun would always know what's going on in your life. You would always be broadcasting to the sun. The sun would be able to sense in any moment if your life started to go awry, like if you started to go over into one side, be like, oh no, that lady's going to hit the membrane of death. I better do something. The sun would be like, trying to get you back on track. And that would be with a new thought structure or a new behavioral pattern or a new viewpoint or a new worldview. So every time you guys get and ingest and eat a new worldview, it helps you to go from this slanted angle that brings you toward the inevitability of the membrane of death to incrementally shifting to remembering your eternal self. And that's why I'm always grateful that you come here and listen to me. A big part of the information that I'm sharing is the concept, is or are the concepts that bring you from that inevitability of death posture, like you're all crooked over to one side, to standing up straight and being like, oh, I don't have to die. And that is the essence of what ascension is. Ascension is a type of transformation and inner empowerment that transcends or avoids the mortality event. The mortality event is when you smash into the membrane of death. So it's a writing, like writing something, making it go right concept for me to tell you that death is not a liberation. It doesn't actually bring you where you want to go. People in this world I've also had to learn. I sometimes say you have very threadbare souls. Like when you, not all of you, but some of you, have been like, we've been through the washing machine too much. You put like a t-shirt or whatever through the washing machine so many times, then at a certain point it becomes like really, really thin, threadbare. And then at a certain point, if you send it through even more, then it starts to get holes in it. And then you hold it up, you're like, can't wear this t-shirt anymore. It's got a bunch of holes in it. And that is what it feels like for some people whose joy of life has been very corroded by the friction of being in non-ideal postures in the time field, and then having to do your math wrong, and then having to hit the membrane of death, and then having a life assessment, and then figuring out that it's not right, and then trying to fix it. Like that is not optimum, and that is not what all of these life experiences are supposed to be about. You're supposed to be able to move forward in a frictionless bliss and not be threadbare by going through the cycles so many times. So when I talk about that boulder of consciousness, it is totally aberrant. It is not educational. It is not helping you to ascend. Having a boulder in your path does not help you to ascend. And it is different than what I'm talking about, but I feel like I want to allude to how I've spoken to you about fear in the past. That fear was meant to be, to kind of balance here so I can do this for you. If this is the membrane of death, fear is supposed to be the proximity sensor that is right here. That if you're turning your ship towards the membrane of death and you start to go in this direction, at a certain point, your proximity sensor should go boop, 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 beep, 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 beep. Don't go here. Dude, that's not good. Fear is supposed to tell you that you're headed in the wrong direction. But fear has been mispurposed, and it doesn't just exist in this area over here now. Now fear exists in this area here. When you can be completely on your correct timeline, fear has been reprogrammed or hacked or mispurposed so that it can literally be the boulder directly in front of your path and not something that is signifying that you're off your path and you're headed towards the periphery. And that is building muscles inside of you that are actually anti-ascension. There are so many things that people learn in this world, then they internalize as a cosmic truth, where they're like, I got to face my fears. If fear is there, something good is on the other side. Like I have my back goes up, I'm like, I got to face my fears. But that's because in this world, yes, good stuff is on the other side of your fears. But in a correctly calibrated world, death is on the other side of your fears. Fear is there for a reason. Death is on the other side of your fears. So it's a very poorly calibrated world. And I sometimes talk about that funny movie called Defending Your Life, which has some good stuff in there. And it's definitely comedic and it's worth watching. And I think you get some of my references, but it's not totally accurate and true in terms of esoteric knowledge, because what it teaches you is that through the actions of the main character, he is only able to kind of like jump off of the cycle of, reincarnation and all those things when he faces his fear. So it's another one of those things where you're like, you're learning these postural muscles and these adversarial stances that literally do not translate when you get to the next layer and level. So you are not in a video game, but you are evolving. And when you ascend and when you transcend through this layer of being and you get back to that big giant purple dot, you emerge into a new reality. And then you have a whole new set of things to learn. So it's kind of like you leave one job and then you start your next job. But some skills are not transferable skills. And I have already told you many times about how many, many, many years ago, when I worked as a custom framer in one particular frame shop, their mat cutter, this complex kind of wall-mounted apparatus, was miscalibrated. 3/16 wrong in one direction and 1/16 wrong in the other direction. And I was a total new person. I didn't even know what an inch was, but I had to learn not only what an inch was, but also what is a 3/16 of an inch so that I could learn how I could compensate for the miscalibrated machine. And yes, when I was in that position, I remember very strongly asking, well, can't we just recalibrate the machine? And they were like this, do not recalibrate the machine, Aurora. And I was like, look, they're just stickers on the side. Like we can just pull these stickers right off and then move them over to 16th of an inch and then not have to do the complex compensational procedure. And they were like, Aurora, do not touch the stickers. All right. So this is kind of like with like me here now. I'm able to say like, can't we just recalibrate fear so that it isn't directly in everyone's paths? And that would make it so much easier for all of us. But apparently no one wants me to touch the stickers in this reality, but I'm working on it, guys. I really am. Let's just say people are in love with their dysfunction. And then what does that mean as a result? When I graduated from that job and I went to work in a different frame shop, I worked on a machine that was properly calibrated. And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, those were all non-transferable job skills that they didn't have anything to do with any other frame shop. I was just working at that one shop, and that's what I had to do at that one shop. But then when I got into a better position, I was like, oh yeah, the machines around here work perfectly. And then I can throw out all of those adjustments that I constantly have to make. So please know that you guys are exactly like me as a new worker in the world. And you're like, oh yeah, we're just calibrating to this as normal. And we have to do huge compensational computations just to be able to ascend and get through life. But when you emerge into the next layer of reality, you won't have to do all of those contortions. You can be much more direct. A lot of what you're learning here is not transferable in terms of your job skills. And you're like this, harumph, because I mastered how to do these compensations and contortions. And I'm like, harumph, I know it ain't fair, it ain't right. And I'm trying to move the stickers. I really, really promise. So let me do more questions over here, because so that was even just the first question. Suzuka says, I need to go over X, then just type in Aurora. Yeah, so I am on X, and that is what used to be Twitter. And I have my same account since 2012, literally. I have not changed anything about it. Or, some people like have all these different fake accounts or anonymous accounts or whatever. Literally been the same account since 2012. It's Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So that's probably how you could find me there. And I have not that many followers. I have 800, which is pretty good, but not that good for being there for 13 years. This actually, so sometimes I get my shoulders are down a little bit because I'm like, something, humanity, I have a lot to tell you guys, and sure wish that I could not be so social media suppressed in terms of getting this information out there. But I have noticed a positive change since Twitter changed ownership. Not that, everything became perfect, but that the algorithm changed. I was able to communicate with people more, and my posts went further. So what was happening in the past was I would write or share something and simply just 3 people would find it, because again, the algorithm and which voices are elevated on social media, it has a lot to do with, who is condoned, who is celebrated, and who is suppressed in your culture at this moment. And I'm going to go more into your questions about this, but some of the things that are coming to light from DOGE, which is this independent audit organization that's going through USA government, are these senses of which media outlets have been elevated and their voices and their ability to communicate amplified, and which media outlets have not been subsidized and have not been amplified. And the answer is that the ones that have been subsidized and amplified are the ones that carried a particular narrative that is the narrative of the current regime, and that promoted a very limited and particular worldview that is not more valid than other worldviews, but was presented as if it was not only more valid, but more prevalent than it actually is. So it was presented as the only correct worldview, and as the majority believes in this worldview. And that was a subsidized and artificially amplified communication throughout your community, throughout your culture. And this was worldwide too. So it is very much about controlling the narrative and controlling people's consensual reality. So during those years when the information was not only suppressed, but some voices were artificially elevated, there were many frictions that you experienced in your conversations in community, where you would say something like, I believe blah, blah, blah is true. Like, maybe I believe that these things that are going on that go into people's skin, maybe they shouldn't be going to people's skin, and maybe they're not that great. And then other people would come along and they'd be like, well, do you have a government mandated, CIA funded, accepted source on that? And can you link it to me? Be like, no, I don't have that. And it didn't come from Google search because Google is controlled by CIA. I don't know if I can say that. Maybe I should just drink some juice. But there were many things that were not allowed to be openly said because they did not come from a supported narrative, and that those who said them were not allowed to have as loud of a voice in your society. And I did see an improvement in the ability to communicate with people over Twitter and then over Facebook subsequently. So something has changed within the past 6 months that has made it possible for more information to come out. Tom, thank you for sharing my handle. on Twitter. I think that's what people call it. So thank you for sharing it that there. And Christopher, thank you for being here, says, yes, I'm looking forward to discussing DOGE at your retreat. You must have heard me today in my thoughts. I totally have. And that's thank you. One of the best things when I started doing the retreats last year, it was in May of 2024, and we gathered in Sedona. That was one of the first times that people that mostly know me from this online community were able to be together in person. And we had some of the most amazing experiences were like after our meals, sitting around the table and just talking and sharing about our lives and our viewpoint. And people found so much solidarity and like, family level of maybe family isn't the right word because maybe you're at odds with your family, but like beautiful levels of rapport and mutual support in sharing their viewpoint, especially the viewpoint of what happened during the pandemic, because most of our voices had been very suppressed. And it was not possible to speak openly about a lot of the things that we had experienced. And people shared with me about what their experience was like in their community. Like one person lives in England and shared with me some videos who was from what had happened in her area of the world. And I was like, this is amazing. I never saw those videos, of course, because the algorithm on whatever social media I was on did not allow those videos to come to my profile, or maybe the originator only shared it with 10 people because it didn't go much further. Like you start to see how these are really powerful ways of taking the fire out of people when you want to be able to share information and you can't, and there are blockades of communication and connection. It can make it very difficult to validate your viewpoint, to be like, wow, am I the only person who knows this? It's like, no, you're not the only person who knows this. Everybody knows this. You're being prevented from connecting effectively. And that is a microcosm for the macrocosm, where right now you're trying to connect with the sun and the stars, and there is a large conglomerate, or whatever we would call it, a group of suppression factors. And how I describe it in your Ascension is that they are getting high off of your stash. I know I use loose language and sometimes I'm very silly, but please think of it in those terms. Like your ascension energies are flowing to you from the sun and the stars. They come from the galactic center. These energies are supposed to make you feel absolutely ecstatic. Like the definition of the word ecstasy is like religious ecstasies. That's how you're supposed to feel. So, because sometimes people are conflated with like, sexual ecstasies or something like that. But I'm talking about deep spiritual euphoria. That is what you're supposed to be feeling. That is what you were supposed to be feeling all the way back in 2019. And I noticed that there was a big change in the frequency of the energy running through the electrical lines that go around my neighborhood. Because in my neighborhood, we have electrical lines like up on telephone poles, because some places they have it buried under the ground. So no, I felt a big change in the quality of that electrical energy. And I felt my usual levels of euphoria that would be, let's say, expanded like 10 miles outside of my head, shrink down, shrink down, shrink down. And with every successive deployment of different types of technology, I felt a diminishment and a shrinking of my bubble of euphoria. And it's been very, very difficult to maintain my natural lasagna state and, being naturally euphoric and ecstatic. And it's been very, very difficult for me to connect with the sun. What used to be a very, very simple thing of sun gazing became very, very rare and very difficult for me to do. It was not about proximity to the sun or being able to see the sun with my eyes, because there was a time when I lived in a neighborhood that was 1 block literally from the beach in San Diego area. And I thought when I moved there, like, I will be able to see the sun go down on the ocean every day. This is going to be great for sun gazing. But it was a very, very 5G area. And the 5G frequency itself meant that even though I could optically see the sun, like the sun is right there, and I'm trying to eat the sun into my mind, I was not able to effectively activate my light body because of the frequencies that were coming between me and the sun. So you are all trying to do this. You're all trying to ascend. to get into this perfect position, to be structured correctly in your body, and to connect with the sun and the stars and receive all of your light codes. When you can do that, you do transcend the need for physical food. But it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens over time. And that's been stolen from humanity for the past 5 years because there has been this frequency stuff that has been here all around your world and even emitted by satellites at this point that makes it very, very difficult for our minds and our inner eye to receive that light of consciousness that comes from the sun and the stars. And if that makes you mad, it should make you mad because it's totally not fair. And it's not even the sense of they are, imagine putting an umbrella around you so that the sunlight can't get to you. But the umbrella itself, that's like the prison warden. Like if you are in prison and somebody's going to send you a care package, they're going to send you some cookies or whatever you want, and the warden intercepts that care package. It's like, someone cares about you. They're sending you cookies. And then he eats the cookies and then gives you nothing. That is what humanity has been experiencing. That is not okay. So that's what I mean when I say they're getting high off of your stash. These organisms or levels of consciousness or whatever we would call it, because I don't really want to personify it, but it consumes some of that euphoric life force energy for itself and feels more elevated. Again, even though I don't want to personify it, but it has a beneficial reason for doing it. And I also say that it's like an addiction because, the truth is like nobody needs cocaine or heroin. Like these are not vital nutrients. The human body can survive very, very well without those drugs. All right. But when people become addicted to those drugs, it's like it's never enough. They will start off with whatever, one gram, and then it has to be 2 grams, then it has to be 3 grams, and 4 grams, and 5 grams. And then they're spending thousands of dollars every day because they have increased their appetites. These blockades, the warden, the interlopers that come between you and the world of pure light, they are very similar, they or it, however we want to talk about it, because it's really non-being. But whatever it is in this moment, it has an addictive quality or addictive personality, behavioral expressions in that a little bit is never enough. And it's expanded its appetite to this point where it's like chomping away on all of your ascension energies. You have lots of people that care about you in the world of pure light. That's like being in prison and you have family at home that love you and they're baking you cookies, but you're not receiving any of those care packages because it's all being consumed by this interloper. And so the interloper does blockade you from connecting to divine consciousness, but it also steals and misappropriates your resources. And the story of the past 5 years has not just been a story, and even beyond, of government inefficiency in the United States or beyond. It is a story of fraud, corruption, and waste on a cosmic level. And it is very truthful that the microcosm and the macrocosm and levels of secular reality and levels of esoteric reality fractally respond or reflect patterns that are happening. So the same things that are happening in your secular world are happening in your esoteric world. So there's been government fraud, waste, and corruption in terms of the energy of taxes that have been collected from places like the United States, and then in who has received those taxes or where it's been spent. And although I am based in the United States, this isn't just a story about the nation state that I live within or the geographical borders that I live within, because the United States has influenced, if you're international, probably things that are happening in your own country as well, as the United States and some of this funding went to international quote unquote aid agencies or NGOs, non-government organizations. A lot of the work was done outside of the United States and even influenced the journalistic media around the entire world. And this really affects the entire world economy. So it's not just a story of the revelations of naughty, corrupt politicians in one particular nation state. It really is the revelation of energy out of place. The tax money is energy. It's been taken, it's been spent in ways that bloat or make bigger. You've watered the weeds in the garden, didn't water the good tomato plants and the beautiful flowers and the things that you actually want in the garden. And now there is a independent oversight that is making that evident to you. How do I feel about the independent oversight? Like, I am still not a fan of Elon Musk. I still call those satellites star poops instead of Starlinks. In fact, I was very happy when I heard that in January, 120 of the Starlink star poops, the satellite doo-doos, came down out of the sky because they corrode in their orbits as a normal part of this is like disposable technology. They were not put up there to last for the ages. They were put up there to be only there for a limited amount of time. And so it is normal for them. They're like, don't worry, this is normal. It's like whatever when you have a lot of something and you lose a few along the way. You're like, this is perfectly normal. Don't worry, we'll make more. And that's their viewpoint as well. So these were some of the earlier generation satellites, but I'm still like, hooray, like it's 120 less sky poops that are vomiting out this particular consciousness reduction frequency onto into our world or whatever, into our skies. The less, the better. But those satellites are a visual allegory for the esoteric energy that is up above your head, encapsulating and limiting this world from fully connecting with the sun and the stars and also otherworldly consciousnesses. So to bring your attention back to this painting, Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, or Birth of a New Dimension. Sorry, wait. This one over here is Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. This one over here is Birth of a New Dimension. And you can see it's not necessarily a positive thing that you have all of these extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional presences that are all around the planet. They're not necessarily making ascension happen, because one of the key points of today's presentation is that ascension is baked in. It is an innate aspect or inevitability of you as a time creature. And the only question is, how many evolutions or revolutions does it take for you to go through this refinery process for you to reach the exact correct trajectory so that you move through time in just the right way to reconnect with yourself as divinity and then receive all of that energy and empowerment flowing back to you. So in the former way of doing things, I showed you on the little whiteboard that I drew, you arrive and you go into this position over here. That's not the correct starting position. You want to be in position over here. So that is unnatural. Or another way of thinking about it is your pen is like this and this is tilted like this. And that is not a natural position for your chakras. And then gradually with each lifetime, your chakras turn until finally you're like this and you're in the right position. But in ancient concurrent Atlantis, all of our chakras were in the correct position and all of us did it one time and we did it perfectly. And that might seem like an impossibility to your present level of comprehension because you are not yet time literate. But if you had a functional inner eye, you would be able to see and sense the future. And then that what I just shared with you would not seem to be such a great unlikelihood, but you would be like, oh, because you can sense the future. Like if you can sense what's going to happen, you can respond to it and you don't have to go in this direction. So if you can sense like, oh, I'm heading towards the membrane of death, beep, 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 don't hit the membrane of death, then you'd be like, how could I make a different choice and get myself going in this direction again? It is only because you've been flying blind and you have been illiterate that you have not been able to correctly perceive time and be 100% empowered as individuals the way that you're supposed to be. So the old way of doing things is through trial and error, where you have to go through every single wrong note of the piano in order to finally find what is the right note in your life. And that every single wrong note exploration is what makes souls very threadbare, is what makes people feel very existentially kaput and out of gas, because you're not supposed to have to do that. So it's not optimum. It actually doesn't serve the time field at all. It makes a lot of filler. actually makes a lot of, like, imagine you're doing your math and you have all of these sheets of scrap paper. You're like, oh, that wasn't the right one. Crumple it up, throw that one away. Maybe this one. Oh, that wasn't the right one. And you have this whole entire wastebasket of crumpled up pieces of paper. Those are all lives that you lived in order to find out that you weren't doing things correctly. And that is really suffering and painful. So it's not just that the Pooties decided, like, I'm going to be a Pootie. Mommy, Daddy, when I grow up, I want to be a turd on the membrane of death who refuses to flush. I'm going to be an echo smear of something that once was, and I'm not going to go into peaceful self-realization and change and transform and evolve. No, I'm going to stay stuck on the membrane of death. And most importantly, Mommy, Daddy, I'm going to screw it up for the rest of everyone. And they're going to pat you on the head and be like, good baby demon, good baby demon. Of course, I'm being so silly. I have to hydrate. Thank you. I have to make jokes because otherwise it's very sad. No, really. What makes a person or an entity or whatever kind of consciousness choose to put itself on the membrane of death as an indelible smear? Like, who would want to be that? It's almost incomprehensible to me. Like a math student that wants to do their math wrong, or something that totally doesn't comprehend what eternal life is. So, being an eternal smear on the membrane of death is not equivalent to the type of eternal life that happens when you're on the ascension pathway and you're also a part of that entire constant vibrating perfect grid of consciousnesses that are emerging from the source and returning back to the source. That perfect circuits is the word that's coming to me, and also biofeedback. Those perfect reflections are eternal life. And it's because everybody is calibrated very beautifully. And it's because everybody plays their part in the symphony perfectly. And if you have these bad students or bad musicians who are like, Mommy, Daddy, I want to grow up to play the worst music possible and get kicked out of the band. It's like, that's not a valid life path. Choose a different path. But because it's still up for grabs in the sense of, like, did they make themselves go there? Like, they built a crap time machine. They did a lot of bad stuff technologically. Did they do it on purpose? Be like, I know, like, I'll build the worst time machine in the world that will screw up me and everyone else. That sounds like a great idea. Like, this is my SpongeBob face. This is not a face of an intelligent person at all. No, that seems like a stupid thing to do. But maybe they are stupid, or maybe they are self-destructive, or who knows? Like, I can't go into motivations because it's so different than me. Like, I can't even describe motivations. But incomprehensibly, some technology users created technology that was like bad time toasters. That's from Homer Simpson's cartoon show. And they got stuck on the membrane of death. And their lack of soul evolution becomes a boulder of impediment to you. They have fed upon humanity from the membrane of death and from the periphery for a very long amount of time in terms of creating death, and then feeding upon the consciousness in its transition between lives or between existences, or impeding that journey. But they also have now really impeded ascension, which is to interfere with the living. So it's different. If you die and go into the membrane of death, they have been there for a very long amount of time. It's not valid, but they're like, oh, like, you're in my town now. I'm going to, screw you up so bad. And I'm going to do all this and that because you got on my turf now. But we are not dead. Newsflash, like, if anybody who's watching this video ever is wondering, like, are you alive? Are you dead? What is going on? Like, you're alive. You're alive. And you just saw me drink orange juice. Dead people don't drink stuff. I'm the worst person to watch TV shows with or anything like that, because I'll be in all of these, like, whatever. I like this show called The Magicians. I haven't watched it in a long time, but there's a whole season of the show where some of these characters go to the underworld and they're in the land of death, but someone's eating cupcakes down there. And this is me thinking about this. I'm like, they're dead. Like, they are dead presences. Like, they don't need to eat. They're not going to starve to death. Why are they eating cupcakes? And also, Where do the cupcake ingredients come from? Do they have to go to the store and buy the cupcake ingredients in the dead underworld? Is there a shopkeeper in the dead underworld? Is there a flour mill in the dead underworld? Is there a cake decorator in the dead underworld? None of these questions are ever answered. They're just asked by Aurora's mind. And then you just see someone in the dead underworld eating a cupcake. So inquiring minds need to know what is the truth about all of this stuff in death. So that comedy routine all aside, in my curriculum, I talk all about in the world of ascended mastery and in the world of positive, transcended after existence. So not if you have died, but when you are in heaven, not Christian heaven, but heaven that is the star system. Like you're supposed to get on the stellar network, guys. You're supposed to not hit the membrane of death and hang around there. That is not heaven. That is an after existence. That is not a positive after existence. And it only exists to tell you about the things that you did not do right, which is why I like that movie called Defending Your Life, because they go to Judgment City, which is a place that is really only devoted to examining the minutiae of your life so you can figure out what you did not do right. Okay. But that's very different than heaven. Heaven is literally becoming a signal on the stellar network, which is like what Aurora is, who I am, my non-physical waveform presence as a light entity. All right. And when you're in heaven, one of the first things that people do and master as a way of like playing with other people's minds is being a chef of the mind. Okay. So you are here right now, and you are actually the generation that will not have to have a mortality event in order to be able to transcend, become a light being, become even faster than light, and remember your God self. But right now you have a physicality presence, and a big part of what you do is you eat food, and food is part of your rapport with the sun. That sunlight comes to the world, and also please take my Path of Light class, and it is caught by a leaf like a photosynthesis being, and it is turned into matter. And that process is a requirement for you to be alive as a person in this world where we eat matter. So that way you can eat leaves, or you can eat animals who eat leaves. And that's the basis of food. You're like, Aurora, you're talking to us like we're in kindergarten. I'm like, this is like fascinating stuff. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Every place where you see photosynthesis, miracles are happening. This plant right here in front of my, little window is totally performing miracles every minute of the day. It's pretty amazing. And it gets bigger and bigger as it's performing more and more miracles. Like it's making matter in front of my eyes. I know. And it is not an edible plant. It is just decorative. But in ancient Atlantis, we had plants that were friends and that emitted like a beautiful frequency. We didn't have plants just so that we could mash them up with our mouth crystals, which is your teeth, and then ferment them in our tummy, and then have it be used into energy, turned into energy, kind of like a steam engine. Like you shovel coal into a steam engine, you burn it, you make heat, and also some amount of work. That is the old materialist viewpoint of what eating is. But eating is really about ingesting light. And what I teach to each one of you is this form of mindful or ascended eating. While you are here in your material form of, density or matter, and you have access to food and you eat in order to sustain yourself, you must, first of all, redefine and recognize food as light. So I'm like, okay, this juice has oranges and pineapple and ginger and all sorts of other good stuff in there. All of those are fruits that are part of a plant that ate light and then refined that light into the fruit. And then the fruit goes into the juice. And I am drinking light because I am drinking juice. But I also just had like a hamburger, a bison burger. I just ate a piece of a bison. And the bison walked around for many, many years eating grass, eating plants, eating vegetation, and turning it into wonderful, strong muscle fibers. And now I eat those muscle fibers, and that becomes me, and that becomes a part of me. So all of this, it's not sanctifying the mundane, because I never looked at food as being mundane. Like when I first came here, I didn't comprehend food. I didn't eat it for several weeks. And then I also didn't comprehend the food room and the magical pieces of paper that one must one must achieve in order to be able to gain access to the food room. But the food itself, once I kind of got the hang of it and started to eat it, I always felt like that this was very magical and positive. And I also remember in those first few years of being here, as a walk-in, that I tasted a variety of different types of food. Like there was the type of food that was made by the local cafe where, like you get a little cup of soup, but it's made from like fresh vegetables. I can still remember the soup actually. It was made like some kind of shrimp bisque or something like that. It had like some shrimp in there and red peppers and like a very nice savory broth. And I remember eating a small cup of it and I was like, oh, like this has light in it. And then I also remember, this is like in the first couple of years that I was here, receiving a cup of soup that was made like Lipton instant cup of soup that you kind of open up the packet and put it in with water, and then you drink that soup. And I remember having that soup, and I was like, this is dead food. Like there is no light in this food, but there's calories in it, but there's not actually light. And that's just, it's been, which I would say it's a no-brainer. That was something that was intuitively obvious to me as a person that has an activated light body and moving through this world. And of course, I always gravitated to the food that was full of light, that fed my light body. And every time that I tasted food or could sense that it was dead food, because I got to be pretty good about sensing food just with my fingertips, so I didn't have to actually eat it, or sometimes just smelling it, and avoiding the food that is dead food. Because I also started to learn like this world is not a safe world. Once I experienced that thing with the soup, I was like, that's weird. Why are there these very different qualities of food in this world? And then I had to learn more about the nature of your world. And then I started to learn more about food ingredients, all of these different things. So yes, at a certain point, I learned like for self-preservation, you must avoid certain foods. And also that I always knew about the negative agenda that was here and those that promote it. Those guys are always advancing. So when I first came here, I ate bread and all sorts of wonderful good things. I lived in upstate New York area. And so, of course, I ate a lot of bagels and pizza and things that are like, the inexpensive delicacies of their culture over there. And I also remember that I used to walk through the food room, the grocery store, especially through the aisles where they have the bread and the bakery. And when I first started to do that, since the early 2000s, I would smell the bread and I'd be like, oh, that smells so good. It smells like life itself. All right. Because I'm very oriented of like I would definitely walk through bakeries, not to buy the food, but just to smell it and just to look at it and feel it. And then I remember around 2006, 2007, when I would walk through the grocery store and through the bread aisle, and it didn't smell nourishing to me anymore. It smelled acidic and kind of reminded me of like an old man's aftershave. That's the only way I can describe it, like aqua velva or something like that. It did not smell good and appealing and maternal and sustaining anymore. It smelled like something that did not seem good. And started to then be educated. I got more educated about what GMO stuff was and how they were genetically modifying the wheat and what glyphosate is and how that related to that. So, yeah, I learned like they're poisoning the food and you got to avoid certain foods. All right, so wait, I'm going to tell you more stuff. And I've been kind of sprinkling amidst all of my social commentary the information that is in the actual curriculum. And I didn't send out my notes last night because I told you I was still deciding this morning about what I was actually going to talk about today and how to relate that to what's currently going on. But I will send out the notes as part of the archive. Thank you. I got to drink some light. Hold on a second. So Pedro, thank you for being here and for being a long-term student. Has a question. It says, are we concurrent with more than Atlantis? Yes. Let's also say that Atlantis represents a level of reality that is not the only culture that we've ever experienced. So Atlantis came after Lemuria, and we are also in Lemuria. That is another concurrent experience. And I'm having trouble with the word saying after, because what actually happened was here's the shell, outermost shell of reality, that is Lemuria. And when that culture was no longer an inhabitable place, Then all of our consciousness jumped into the next shell that is a slightly smaller shell inside of there. That is the shell of Atlantis. And then when that place got invaded or is in imminent danger of being invaded, then we jumped even smaller into our present level of reality. And how I describe Lemuria is that was when you as a soul were just mastering the lesson of how to have a body. So right now, in this level of reality, having a body is considered right down here, the primary existence. I have a body. I am, and I exist. But in Lemuria, that was the violet. That was the pinnacle of reality. You might take it for granted. Like, yeah, you come to Earth, you get a body. And some people are like, why did I ever do this? I don't like having a body. I have to use various different hygiene products and feed myself and do all these different things. It's very hard. But everybody here gets a body. Like even the, I want to say lamest losers, even the people that are most not together and not evolved and not self-actualized in their lives have a body. So they pass the audition, at least on the foundation level. But in Lemuria, having a body was the pinnacle of existence. So it's not something that you can just take for granted. It actually takes an enormous amount of spiritual power and attainment to go from the direction of being in the eternal moment of the zeroth dimension, being an ephemeral being, a waveform of pure energy. How do you get a body? How do you become matter? So we're on the journey level where we're trying to go from being matter back into light. And to a lot of people here, they're like, oh, like that guy became pure light. Like if you saw whatever, an ascended master or someone, any of these people that we tell stories about, or that book, The Rainbow Body, like that's someone I admire. Like they went from being a meat person, a flesh person, into being of pure light. Wow, I'm like amazed by that. Right? It's valid. You'll do it. But you could also be similarly amazed when you're a being of pure light and you've never been a being of flesh. And you're like, oh, I don't know. I've never been a flesh person. How do you do it? How do you get dense? How do you achieve matter? How do you sustain yourself in those levels of reality? So that was the first lesson that we all had to learn as souls, how to even get a body. And what life was like in Lemuria was more like being a fungi. Like here in this, that's the best way, analogy I have, in this world where you have a fungi that has mycelial roots that go down into the soil and then the fruiting body, and it just kind of stands there. It doesn't really move around and do a lot of stuff, just stands there. In Lemuria, that was enough. You didn't run around and do stuff. You just stood there. So the physical body form in that time and place was more of an anchor for consciousness. So you went from the ephemeral nature of being pure consciousness into having a container for consciousness that was in the physical world that needed some amount of sustenance, but that sustenance was achieved without a lot of willpower and motivation. So like squirrels, you got to run around a lot, but fungi do not run around. They just kind of stand there, and water comes to them, and air comes to them, and nutrients come to them, and everything comes to you, and you just kind of receive it. That's what our lives were like. We didn't have any kind of industry, struggle, willpower, anything. Just becoming an alive person, being in the world, having a container body, and being able to figure out how to regulate like hydration, nutrition, ingestion of light, and all these other things was enough. And you didn't lose that world because somebody was like bitch slapping you, or a World Wrestling Federation, like, you're going down. That's how people always try to portray it. They misportray it because you're feeling it through all of these layers of guilt and shame and remorse and all of the trauma, seeing it through your layers of trauma. But please remove the trauma glasses and look at it clearly. What happened was you mastered the level of being at that level. And then you're like, okay, I lifted the 5-pound weight. I built all these muscles. And then you're like, now I have to do something harder. Now you have to do something harder. So then consciousness was transferred into Atlantis. And in Atlantis, we had bodies that are much more recognizable as bodies to what we presently have in terms of our shape and also in terms of mobility, like we weren't just sitting there or floating there without effort, and that was our level of existence. We had a lot more individuality, willpower, opportunity to do stuff and get stuff done, and lots more opportunity for strife. And the strife wasn't necessarily like cutting off somebody's head with a machete or anything like that. It was more like interpersonal ego stuff. And the ego stuff might be more like, well, I always wear my jacket like this. And someone else was like, no, I always zip my jacket up fully. And it's like, we're very different people. You're so different than me. I'm so different than you. How can we anything? It's like, no, like you're having a minor personality conflict. Like we would in this world laugh at those challenges. But those challenges were big, giant challenges to who we were at that time. Whether your jacket is open, whether your jacket is zippered closed, was a big deal. And we learned a lot from all of that. All right, let's take a brief pause. We're going to have a brief pause for everybody to do food, water, or anything else that you might need for your beautiful body form at this moment. Going to take care of Cheeky. Hold on a moment. Thank you for allowing that brief pause. Cheeky sure enjoys it or appreciates it too. And just to wrap everything up on that topic, that was when we learned a lot of the lessons that we needed to learn in that paradise and ideal state in Atlantis, and built a lot of the spiritual muscles by going through the relative ego frictions, relatively small ego frictions of just living together in individuated human society. Then we came into this world, but that is very much a diminishment of and a hijacking of the ascension experience that we were supposed to have in Atlantis. So that's why, I see going from Lemuria to Atlantis not necessarily as being a punishment or a diminishment of your journey, but going from Atlantis to where you are here is definitely a wrong turn. And anything that brings you to death is a wrong turn. So we went from a world that wasn't different than this. It was still shaped like this, but in the other world, in Atlantis, no one ever was like shaped in this direction. We only were ever shaped in this direction. And that is the state of total health. And now we're in a world where dis-ease is possible, meaning going at an angle, going towards the membrane of death. So this level of reality is really more of an aberration or a place that we shouldn't even be, a wrong turn on the highway. And that's why, having made a wrong turn on the highway and then made so many cycles through this area of the bad neighborhood that you ended up in, lots of people are like highly traumatized and looking at their whole entire soul existence through that lens of trauma. But when you remove that trauma, you see that in other times and places, it was like, oh, yes, I completed my life lessons and then I went on to the next level. But in this particular experience, it was not necessarily a positive completion of life lessons. It was more a hijacking and diminishment of the ongoing ascension experience of those of us in Atlantis. And then you come here into this world. And of course, I haven't lived in this world for many millennia, but maybe you as a soul have. Like I came in 2001, so I'm not threadbare. I'm like, my fabric is very bright and colorful, and I haven't been through the washing machine that much. And I'm like, everything here is super cool. Like, let's have lots of fun and learn about doing stuff. And you're all like, Aurora, we are so over it. Like, can we get out of here? And I'm like, no, you don't want to get out of here. You want to make here a lot better. So also, like, how do we resolve all of this? The answer is not to try to somehow rewind and reverse and, rewind the videotape and go back to Atlantis, because you can't. You kind of can't back your way out through these events. You have to evolve and move forward, and you can't deny and pretend away that the traumas didn't exist and that the experience of death and mortality and all the things that you experienced in this world, yes, which is a world of suffering and loss, those things are actually not part of your cosmic weightlifting program. That you want to say like, oh, Lemuria had to happen so Atlantis could happen, so I could build all the foundational muscles, so I could lift 100 pounds here in this world that is very effed up. And I'm like, no, actually, no, that's presumptive and erroneous. You are lifting a lot of weights here and building a lot of muscles, and you're able to lift 100 pounds, but this world is miscalibrated. And you are building muscles that are non-transferable job skills. So, there's different muscles in your body, and some of them are involved in like pushing things away, and some of them are involved in pulling things towards you. And all I can say is that from what I've experienced here over my time as Aurora, like over 20 years, the muscles that I've built here have been not natural ascension muscles. Natural ascension muscles have to do with the ability to relax and allow and be receptive and to without being crass, like to make love to the cosmic infrastructure. There's a sense of vulnerability that happens in that cosmic lovemaking and in the process of creation and the process of creating your life. And in this world, what I've learned is that we have to be so embattled. We have to be like, shielding, shielding, here are my shielding muscles. And it's like, oh, good, I built a lot of shielding muscles. Those will really help me for when I go get my next job. But then you go to the next job and you're like, oh, everything is fine here. I don't have to shield. I built shielding muscles in my previous existence, but that is not relevant here. Okay, so it's good to know that you can do it, but it's not really the purpose for your being. It's like building an immune system because you live in a sewer. You're like, hooray, I have a strong immune system. I can now go live in a sewer. And then you move into a place where it's really nice and clean. You're like, I don't really need all of these antibodies. And your body's like, yeah, well, it's great to just keep these, just file these away in case they ever are relevant. But yeah, no, you live in a clean world now. That's what we're doing. We are purging our world of these consciousness parasites and these diminishment technologies and everything that hijacks and mispurposes energy and takes our soul awry. When we transcend this level of reality, we're not going to be in like an even worse level of reality where you're going to be like, oh, good, I'm so glad I learned how to do all those important shielding and violence activities in the previous one. You're like, none of those are transferable job skills. I have to learn everything from the beginning. And the answer is yes. So, because your shoulders go down a little bit, but it's also positive because the truth is you don't want to have this be the training regimen for an even worse world. So just know, like, okay, this is about as bad as it gets. I want to say, hey, kid, chomping your cigar. Hey, kid, this is as bad as it gets. And it does get better, but you must learn how to transcend this level of reality. And that is the real challenge. What we face with the putis is the impossibility of facing something that is an unresolved emotional issue or trauma in the world that is holding us back. So I write about this in the class notes, that the putis are the accumulated pain signal of the larger cosmic infrastructure or time itself. And it has become exacerbated or so diseased at this point that we can't have time going forward with the status quo. The cosmos augments itself by necessity, and that is why I'm in existence. Flying Rainbow Lasagna pops itself, herself, myself into existence because it's like, you can't just keep going along like this. If you do, you don't have a world. The whole world goes bye-bye. And that is why I self-created. And that is why I invented and innovated the lasagna. Who I am as Aurora in the heavens. Looked at everything that was going on in the, hold on a second, time crystal. This is all of time everywhere that can ever exist. And I'm like, oh, if I don't do something, this is going to get super screwed up. I innovated this in the moment and said, this is what I will do. And in this oscillation with Flying Rainbow Lasagna into this body and this time and this presence here, it allows me to be able to expose is not the right word, educate you with new ideas, bring in new groceries, new light that incrementally helps you to shift as individuals and as a culture away from the membrane of death and towards eternal life. And that's my cosmic job, Joy. And that's what I'm here to do. And so basically, I've been doing that since 2001. And initially, all of my ways of sharing groceries were relatively abstract. Like I would do my lasagna dancing and my oscillation. And then I would, make some drawings and other things, but I hadn't mastered communication. And then it took me a long time to, be better at communication. I wouldn't say master it, but learn how to articulate things and make them accessible verbally as a concept, and then to organize those concepts into a curriculum, and also to make more complex artworks on a grander scale, and then also even to tie it in with music, and then also to begin to share my dance. My dance I've always done, but I didn't always do it in a way that I felt that I could share it with others because it's the ultimate in like cosmic lovemaking. It's just something kind of like not secret, but maybe a little bit private and maybe a little bit vulnerable. And so, yeah, I share it with people that I trust. And that's why I have my Tuesday morning dance group. And that's why I do my wonderful retreats. And the retreats are definitely a culmination of like my life's dream and my life's purpose being here. And it was a huge rectification for our whole entire human collective that the energy that I was moving into in 2019. In 2019, I was doing Zoom classes through the computer for a small group of trusted Flying Rainbow Lasagna people. And I was just starting to envision what it would look like to have in-person Flying Rainbow Lasagna group classes. And then we had the giant worldwide disruptive event that took a lot of people off of their timelines, including me. And then it took a long, long time for me to be able to get back to that inner clarity and genetic strength to be able to share my dance with people again. And that's because a lot of this stuff is anti-lasagna. Like this frequency is definitely anti-lasagna, and these hardwares in the body are very anti-lasagna. And I had to learn all sorts of different ways to clear it out of my body and supersede it so I could lasagna again. And then getting back to the point last year that I did where I organized in-person lasagna dance was very, very significant. And every time we did the dance, we did one in May and then we did one in September, the psychic space in my area here in California lifted up again. And so, because it used to, I told you, I felt very constricted until I'm just like a little tiny bubble with all this like bad stuff all around me. And every time I went to Sedona, which is kind of more of an open psychic esoteric energy place, did the dance with my wonderful group of people. And then I would come back here to Ojai and be like, wow, there's a lot more psychic breathing room every time. And now what Ojai feels like to me, it feels like what it felt like in 2018 or 2017 or so, because Ojai is also a vortex of energy and a place where it is a manifestation portal. There are some places on the surface of the earth where if you are there with your body, you are in front of the cosmic microphone. And so Overlook Mountain is one of those places. That was where I came into this world as Aurora. It's right near Woodstock, New York, which is where I lived for many years. And then Mount Shasta is another one of these natural amplification places. That means like if you go to Mount Overlook or if you go to Mount Shasta and you're camping there or you're walking there, everything that you're thinking when you're camping or walking is amplified to the cosmic world. So if you're walking along and you're saying things that's internal bad talk, if you're talking about yourself and you're like, I'm nothing, I'm a doo-doo, I'll never be anything, that gets manifested outward into the world. So you have to be really mindful about what you think about when you're in those places. But if you think things like, I want to follow my dreams, like my dreams when I was on Mount Overlook were to become a professor and be able to talk about these things, right? And my dreams when I was on Mount Shasta had to do with sharing my artwork with the world. Like when I go to those places, I magnify my mind and I make my wishes to the cosmic infrastructure or the cosmic fabric, and then see what happens as a result of those interactions. And those seeds, when you plant them, when you go to a power spot, and you make your wishes or you plant your seeds, sometimes they come forward in immediacy. Sometimes it takes years. And you're like going along through your life and maybe even wondering if you've lost hope or if things will ever happen. And then it happens. And in that moment of it happening, you're like, this thing that I hold in my hand is a direct result of the thought structure that I had when I was on the mountain 5 years ago. Sometimes it can take 5 years for it to come forward. So please don't give up hope. But that was what some of my experiences taught to me, that sometimes the manifestation is instantaneous and sometimes it is delayed over time, but it does happen. And maybe also be in that level of very intentional hope not like fake fantasy filled hopium, but genuine hope of like, something we have put forward our desires about ascension and reattainment, like remembering God's self and being able to come into these levels of empowerment in personal manifestation. And it is happening, but we did have a delay in that experience. And then I'll go through more questions, but what is ascension? It is the inside becoming the outside. That is what this painting is really all about. There's all of these different events that are happening and swirling around that central event. In that central event, the sun and the earth interact. And the flying rainbow lasagna, I wouldn't say is a result of that, but is a part of that. And the flying rainbow lasagna is the tool that makes your inside world become your outside world, and your outside world become your inside world. And so in what you remember as ancient Atlantis, there was a crustal displacement and a cataclysm that pretty much erased from the surface of the planet evidences of the culture that you lived within. And there might still be some vestigial traces. There might be some things that are under the Atlantic Ocean, like, deep under like the crust. You're never going to see them on Google Maps. Like they're under the ocean. And there might be some other pyramids and other things that are like frozen over in Antarctica, or that grass and other vegetation has grown over in places, I want to say like in Central Europe. Like there's pyramids and things like that that are sprinkled throughout the planet, but it's almost unrecognizable. And also your bodies have changed a lot, and your DNA and your culture has changed a lot. And you think about that and you think, this is going to happen again because you haven't really been healed, or many of you haven't been healed yet from what happened, which was a sudden loss. And that brought you into this level of difficulty. That's why when people are looking at the events of the sun changing its polarity structure, Earth changing its polarity structure, and the ongoing revolution of energy that is happening right now, sometimes people are very afraid and very tied to the cataclysm narrative, because in not healing from and digesting the wounds of what has happened before, people tend to remanifest that and think it's going to happen again. So a big part of my work here for 20 years has been to reassure everyone, you're not going to have another cataclysm, another end of the world. And instead, you're going to have a moment of empowerment in your ascension, where your inner passions become evident in the world around you, manifested, externalized is the word I'm looking for. And then as you walk through the world that is made up about all the things that you care deeply and passionately about, you then feed that energy back into your inner world and then re-emit. This is exactly what the sun is doing with you in your life. And that's why sun gazing is a big part of ascension, and food eating is a big part of ascension. Food is one of the ways that you have a rapport with the sun. So when you eat your food, try to be mindful. Like literally whatever you're eating and you're putting into, it's not just about the tastes. Think about, or in consciousness connect with the profundity of the light that is contained within your food. Like if you're eating an egg, it came from a chicken, and the chicken had to eat light in order to make that egg. In fact, literally chickens don't lay in the dark of winter because there's not enough light for them. And now let's talk about, and this is in my notes of the curriculum, food that is grown under real sunlight and its quality of nutrition versus food that is grown indoors under artificial light, or hydroponically or artificially. And the answer is these nutrients are not the same. If you have, let's say, a field of strawberries outside that's growing under the real sun with real soil, those strawberries will be the evidence of certain levels of intelligence that the plant had to learn how to survive, and the plant had to learn how to regulate everything in its body structure. Plants are masters of time because they have to mitigate their immediate needs for sunlight with the time of nighttime when they don't get any sunlight. So you got to be really good at budgeting your energy. Think about having your monthly budget. What if you only got paid for 2 weeks of the month, and then you had to wait 2 more weeks before your next paycheck? You'd be like, during the first 2 weeks, you'd be like, this is great. I have lots of money. But if you spend all your money, then for 2 weeks, you would be like, I am going to die. I have no resources. Don't be that way. Plants are that way with sunlight. During the day, they have a certain amount of sunlight, and they're like, this is great. I'm getting paid. I'm photosynthesizing. My life is good. Then the sun goes down, and the plants are like, I am not getting paid, and life is very hard. What do I do? So, what most plants do is they store up sunlight as starches in their body and in their root structure, and they use that as their long-term savings account so that they have Monet when they need it, even when they're not getting paid by the sun in the moment. We had to do similar things in ancient Atlantis, where the sun was evident for us during the day, but then not evident for us during the night. And at the night, and we needed sunlight to eat. We didn't eat avocados and tomatoes. We ate sunlight. And if the sun wasn't there, like the plants, we'd be like, I don't know what to do. But we did not have starchy root structures. What we did was we stored up light in crystals. We didn't have little ones like this. We had big ones like the size of the refrigerator. And that would store up a lot of light. And then you could access that light during the time that the sun was not there. And then when the sun came back in the morning, then you would eat the sunlight again. So this is really, really critical for you to be able to comprehend and know about those rhythms of how to budget your energy and how to get through times of there not being a lot. And I would say that those are transferable job skills that you learned in other times and places, because this life that you're in is like nighttime. This is the life that you're in where it is very, very difficult to hear the voice of the divine. Remember yourself as a spiritual being. Remember who you are as a soul. Receive spiritual guidance and nourishment and attainment. All of that comes in here through your mind, through your Christ chakra, through your higher dimensional connection point. And this is a time of great darkness that you've been moving through pretty much for your whole entire existence here in this life. But you will have in life, without a mortality event, an enormous tsunami of light that comes in and makes everything illuminated and evident to you. And that will be exactly like, I don't know if you've had this experience where you live, but during the wintertime, it's usually pretty dark and you kind of can't see what's going on inside of your house that much. And you mostly have, like light bulbs to light your way. But then there's always that moment in spring when something happens, the sunlight changes and starts to come in the window. And all of a sudden you can see like the light is inside of your house and you look around and you're like, holy crap, like I need to clean up. This place looks dirty. Like you can see like the fingerprints that are on the window and you can see fine layers of dust everywhere. And you can see the dust bunnies underneath the couch. And it's like you couldn't see that in the wintertime. The dust was accumulating. You couldn't see effectively to clean. And then that's why people do spring cleaning, because literally the sunlight comes in and you can see all of the stuff that has accumulated in the darkness. So it's almost time for spring cleaning. That will be in Northern Hemisphere in about another month or so. And I just do these things innately, not as a part of any kind of, prescribed ritual or anything like that. It just feels right to me. So yeah, when it's spring cleaning time, you kind of look around and you're like, it is time to like open all the doors, open all the windows, wash the floor, clean out the refrigerator, get rid of everything that's old and gross, make room, get out with the old, in with the new, and make room for fresh energies. That's what the moment of ascension is. And the dust bunnies that have accumulated in your soul are cleaned up and resolved. And you have this light of comprehension that comes into you so that you can have introspection and retrospection on your life and everything you've been through. And so you've been kind of walking along right now, like feeling forward with your footsteps, not really being able to see anything, not really knowing what's going on. And definitely it's difficult to keep things clean in the absence of light. And when light comes, light is information, light is organized data, light is cosmic consciousness. It's the groceries that I'm talking about. It's a pure nourishment. When it comes into you and into your body changes and responds. And when you eat enough light, you get a light metabolism where you're moving at a fast inner rate. And when you move at a fast enough inner rate, then you transcend matter and you become pure energy again. So really the inhibitor to becoming pure energy has been your ability to access light that makes you move at a faster inner rate. Boulders in front of your path, stuff blocking you in this planet from connecting directly with the sun and the stars. Some of those blockades are satellite or particles in the air. Some of those blockades are consciousness based. If you can just get rid of those shields or obstacles, all of the light flows in, and then you're able to have enough light to comprehend what is going on, to navigate effectively, to get faster and faster and faster and revved up inside until you're like, rev, 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 kaboom! And you don't blow up in kaboom, but kaboom is really your reconnection with this point here, with infinity. Reconnect with infinity. So I have many, many more things to say, but I don't want to go too fast. So let's go to questions over here. All right. So that was a great question, Pedro. Thank you. Christopher's laughing at my comedic reportage of the truth when I worked in the original frame shop. And he's laughing that no one wanted me to touch the stickers. No one trusted me to touch the stickers. I know I would have done a good job, but they did not trust me. I think I would have done a good job. Pedro says an FRL mural. That's a site I would like to see. I would like to make it. Absolutely. In fact, I would like to make our whole entire world, not just one mural, but not just one wall, but a whole entire world that is covered in flying rainbow lasagna patterns and cosmic harmonic patterns of deep, deep truth. That was something that I had envisioned actually, art project wise, almost like a graffiti like project where you would just see it on all these different places. So it'll happen. Let me bring up my notes and make sure that I'm getting all the important stuff. Okay, so wait. Just rearranging my screen. Sorry, I make funny faces. All right, so let me scroll and make sure. So a big part of this, boulders in front of your journey. Some of those boulders are at the level of the human daily waking intellect, the yellow chakra right down here, your sense of your verbalized mind. So language is inherently flawed. There are really problems with language on a deep level that are about when, how can I even say this? When you are a young person and you start to learn language and learn how to speak and communicate to the people around you, it is a wonderful gift and a necessity that empowers you to be able to speak your truth and advocate for yourself. Like you can say who you are, what you like and what you don't like. That is good. I like that that happens for people. But what is not good is that the implant of the verbalized talking mind, like your thoughts verbalized to yourself, becomes a blockade or an impediment between yourself as an individual and yourself as God. That there's something inherently flawed with words that blocks out our connection to God and to the sun. So I didn't say it enough, but when you're sun gazing, like you should definitely try to be silent inside. Yeah, you should definitely try to turn off your internal dialogue and connect in a meditative silent state to the sun, because all of the insights and energy light transmission happens at a level that is beyond verbalized language. So when I got the ideas for Path of Light, which is, a different curriculum than this class that I teach, I got those ideas in 2021. The stars did not say, Aurora, sit down in your lawn chair. We will tell you about this, 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 and this, like being a teacher up in front of me. No, like I connected with the stars and the starlight came inside of me. And when it came inside of me, I had all of these nonverbal realizations. And I was like, wow, amazing. And then I was literally like, wow, amazing. How am I going to put that into words? That's some complex stuff. How am I going to put it into words? So in your own life experience, please begin to build a recognition that there are some concepts that you can connect with or that you can touch on with your tendril of attention that are very valid and very complex and very deep and profound, and that are almost impossible to put into words. And that the best you can do is to use poetry verbal allegory and analogies to be able to talk about these things, because there is often not even a direct five senses analog to what you're trying to convey to others. And so verbalized language becomes an inhibitor to divine connection, and it is also wholly inadequate to really talk about and describe and communicate the things that are happening in the higher dimensional realms. And the things that are happening in the higher dimensional realms, that's also the level of telepathy, which is real telepathy. Synthetic telepathy are words that are beamed into people's language centers as a result of the implantation of a variety of artificial, gonna sneeze, pardon me so much, as a variety of these artificial implants that are not even regular neurons. And synthetic telepathy is really more just like someone stabbing your brain with a piece of electricity, and your brain says the word, cow or umbrella. There's no innate meaning behind the phoneme, cow or umbrella. But when you have real telepathy, what you're doing is sending out information on an abstract level before it is clothed with the words cow or umbrella, and you're just sending out the concept, and whoever it reaches, that person or organism clothes that impulse with a series of meaningful symbols, the words that will then be customized to them. If they are an English speaker, English. If they speak Russian, it will be Russian. What if it's a dolphin? Then it might be in the form of different clicks or sonic donut-shaped waveforms that come through them. I'm trying to think of a weird organism. If it's in the form of a bee or a butterfly, they might think in smells. That's correct. They are very guided by pheromones and aromas. So being anthropocentric means focused on the human. You presume that everyone is like auditory visual, right? But some animals and organisms are guided by their aromas in the world around them, and some of them are guided by senses that we don't really have as an analog or can not relate to. Like one example would be like how reptiles can sense infrared when snakes stick out their tongue and they're sensing for heat around them. Like humans don't really have an analog for that, or bats with their sonar and their echolocation. So it's really important to have that reminder that your biology heavily influences your viewpoint and your worldview, your expectations and your presumptions. And that is the danger of being just at the level of anthropocentric seeing, where you're interpreting everything through the human viewpoint. But when you get to the level of the crown, which is also analogous to your DNA and the bridge of light and pure ephemeral light form of who you are, you can relate to any type of organism because you are not merely comprehending it through the filter of a mammalian biped. And you can relate to whatever anyone is, or any creature, or any organism, or any larger network is experiencing. And that's the beauty also of this shape, that this shape is a template of truthfulness that is truthful for you as a human, and is truthful for the planet, and is truthful for the sun and the stars. So let's do this. You as a human want to have this central core timeline, path of least likelihood, that you can occupy and live upon, so that you are making the right choices, moving in the right direction at all times, and you're moving on a timeline that actually has a future, as opposed to one of these slanted timelines that really has an end, a death. Death is like end of the road, kid. All right. Planet. Your planet has an ascension pathway where the entire planetary structure is able to remember itself as a divine creature and return to that perfect alignment with God's self state, or the zeroth dimension, or pure infinity faster than light. All right. And then look, there are all of these other lesser realities that would be peripheral realities for the entire planet, where the entire planet dies. And some of those bad things where the entire planet dies, what would that be? Like something that would be like a cosmic catastrophe, a giant ball of fire, like a flaming meteor, whatever it is, crashes into Earth, and Earth goes kaboom, and fragments fly everywhere. How about some kind of incineration that happens because the sun explodes and goes supernova and encompasses the planet? Like we're talking giant levels that happen, but that would be the extinction or eradication of the planet. Or how about something along the lines of what happened, like I talked to you about in the class about harmonics last week? The planet that used to exist between Mars and Jupiter that is presently a large field of rubble called the asteroid belt. There was a planet there, and that planet did not make it onto its ascension timeline. That planet made it onto the kaboom timeline of bad stuff happening to it, and it got made into a bunch of rubble. So this is important to comprehend that in order for you to ascend, you are on a planet. The planet needs to ascend. All of these ascension pathways line up. All the cells of your body go into their ascension mode. You, as an overarching meta being, goes into ascension mode. Your planet goes into ascension mode. That means that Earth changes. So one of the things that shifted from crustal displacement and the larger catastrophe between the realm we know as Atlantis and this realm here is Earth's axis being on this tilt. I think it's like 26 degrees. And that is seen as being necessary. In this world, it is justified and explained as, well, you have to have that so you can have the 4 seasons, right? Winter, spring, summer, fall. And that way you're not getting fried and all these important things. But I can remember from Atlantis, I don't think that we were tilty like this. I think we were actually up and down like this. And we did not have the 4 seasons. So the 4 seasons in this world of mortality are held forward as a type of proof to the self that death is a part of life. You're like, yep, all of these plants and animals, during the spring they grow, and the summer they grow, and then in autumn there is harvest, and the seeds fall, and then in winter there is death. And then you start the whole cycle over again, and like having a threadbare soul. And although it can be beautiful when you live in a place that has 4 seasons, and it can feel like you're part of the natural rhythm, and it can definitely be beneficial for you in this world to be in conjunction with the natural rhythms of the seasons. Those seasons are actually not part of your factory settings, because death is actually not an innate part of your existence. When this world was created by this amazing genius architect that made all these patterns, that genius did not actually say, let me invent death. I'm going to make all these wonderful creations. I'm going to make the miracle of life. I'm going to make all of these phenomena of consciousness. And then I'm going to kill them all, like some kind of psychopath, like mow them down, like whatever, with a sword or something like that. Like, you're going down, my creations. And no. And also, I hope it sounds silly, but also some of you are like, well, that kind of does sound like God in the Bible. That is not what God would do. Biblical literalists, I apologize to you. I'm not here to incinerate your worldview, but simply to use lighthearted comedy to point out that some of the actions of the creature being described as God in the human Bible behaviorally do not conform to the actions of what we would expect a divine being to do. And also a divine being in the presence of aberrances or pathogens or things that should not and shall not exist would unmake those things, would destroy those things. So it's a fine line, because in the human Bible, God is described as behaviorally controlling God's creatures. If you please me, you may live. And if you displease me, off with your heads. Cut you with a sword, whatever, drown you with water. And that drowning with water is the cellular memory of the catastrophes of Atlantis. But what I'm talking about when I talk about flying rainbow lasagna is sending tendencies to entropy. So we've had putis on the membrane of death for a long amount of time, and they have been rather unrecalcitrant or stubborn stains who refuse to get cleared out. And in order to clear them out, we need to have a place to send them to. Sending people, places, things, etc., to places takes energy. It's like getting a plane ticket. Like it's going to cost $279 to fly between LA and New York. And that's just the cost of doing business. And you have to expect the same thing in the cosmic infrastructure. We want to have the cosmic infrastructure be balanced. If there's energy or matter or consciousness out of place, we want it to go to where it is supposed to go. But those plane tickets are expensive. And so at a certain point, when energy or matter or consciousness is so far off its path, the cost of the plane ticket to get back home would be so much, it would literally be more than the entire cost of the cosmic economy. And some of these consciousnesses that have done stuff to end up as putis on the membrane of death and their parallels, like those guys specifically, and the guys that are like them, and guys is just a catch-all term, but the creatures that are like them, they are in debt. Their debt is so big, they are so far off their path in terms of time, that they are so far away from where they should be, that if you got them a plane ticket to go back to infinity and God and this the central convergence point, the source, it would cost you more than the entire amount of the entire economy of the world of souls, all matter and all energy everywhere. Like it would be so expensive, it would be impossible. You would bankrupt the system by trying to send one of those guys back to where they belong. Because this is a causality structure. Time is a causality structure. So if you're like, okay, well, this thing went off its path over here, but then it got even further and further and further off its path, and then it went all the way over here, over here, over here, and then it went to a parallel dimension, and then it went forward in time, and then it went back in time, and then it went to another parallel dimension. Like this is the type of convolutions that we're talking about. And then it's still far away from where it is supposed to be. The solution would be to go all the way back to the first mistake. The first time that consciousness chose to go in a wrong direction. So it would be like the first time that it started to choose to go over to the side like this instead of going upward towards divinity and God's self-remembrance. And be like, oh, you just made a wrong choice. Don't go any further. Make a better choice. Get back over here, right? But what this consciousness did was it made a wrong choice and then a subsequent level of worse and worse and worse, wronger and wronger and wronger choices. And again, the foundation of cosmic law has to do with freedom. Those were all my F words. That's why I got mixed up. Flying rainbow lasagna, foundation, and freedom. Freedom does mean that you have the choice to be able to make bad choices and go towards death or destruction or peripheral timelines. And it's just like any of these stories of the monkey's paw or people that experiment with bad time travel, science fiction stories. They always screw it up. Time machines do not make things better. Time machines make things worse and mess it up even further. And so that's the Homer Simpson time toaster, that he makes a silly time machine and he keeps on messing stuff up over and over and over. And at a certain point, he realizes like he's never going to get back to his original timeline. Like he's so far away. He's like, okay, we'll just deal with the close enough. We're kind of back, but not really back. So yes, these very poor uses of time distortion technology that can bring matter, energy, and consciousness far away from where it is supposed to be. So far away that at a certain point, there is not a volition or a self-motivation or a thing that person itself can do to get back on track. That's what the putis are. I want to say they have effed themselves. They have effed themselves so badly that they are in the state of ultimate being effed, and they can't un-eff themselves. What happens? It does take someone else or an external impulse to un-F them. And the un-Effing is sending them to entropy. Entropy is not a plane ticket to energy. Entropy is not spending the entire economy of all consciousness everywhere to try to accelerate and increase the metabolism of an inherently flawed level of consciousness. That consciousness must go into a non-being state. And the non-being state must be instantaneous. And it also must include the rectification of all of the energy that erroneous person contained, all must go to where it is supposed to go. So I'm sending you guys out a mental picture now. I'm not sure how many of you got it, but it was kind of the sense of if there's one person who is wrong, who got stuck on the membrane of death, what is holding them there are a series of investments in trauma. And trauma is a stuck energy in time. If any of you have ever experienced trauma in your life, it probably can be remembered as a frozen moment of disbelief, where, yes, there might have been pain or suffering or an injury or something like that, but there was also the psychological shock of, I can't believe this is happening. And that is literally a residue or an imprint of yourself or your soul in time that stays in that moment unless you specifically do trauma healing and soul reclamation, which is where you envision going back to that moment in your memories, because these are traumas held in your body. You go telescope into microscope, look inside of your own body, find the traumas, and then you reclaim those aspects of your soul back to yourself. And you say to the self, you don't have to be stuck there in that moment. Please come here with me. It is whatever's the present day in the moment, like, February 12th, 2025. Come here and be with me. I love you. I love you. I love you. Don't be stuck in that moment. And that is your own individual healing. I also talked about from the teachings of Carlos Castaneda, which are called the teachings of Don Juan de Castaneda, the recapitulation breath, where you breathe in across the horizon, breathing back in your own energy, and then breathe out across the horizon, releasing anyone else's energy or any stuck energy that might be stuck with you in case you're holding other people's traumas. And that is very transformative. It's not the same as holotropic breath work. It is different. It is using your breath as an oxygenation, which oxygenation is a form of combustion. Take my Path of Light class. It will happen soon. And when you add oxygen to something, it helps to transform it, which is what combustion is. Like when you transform a log into a fire, matter is made into light. You're like, the log is an ascended master. It's becoming light. I'm like, well, in a way, yes. In a way, yes. Like if you have a beeswax candle, it's the exudation of a tiny bee's abdomen. And then you're going to light that on fire. You're going to take that product from a tiny alive physicality animal, and you're going to combust it and turn it into light and heat and also small amounts of soot or carbon. And that is matter turning back into light. And that's what the real balance is in this equation of life, where you have consciousness that becomes matter. Consciousness is pure light. Light becomes matter, and then matter re-evolves or transcends and becomes light again, and then light becomes matter again. And that's what that graph is, from the center of this sculpture out to the periphery, and then back to the epicenter. Light becomes matter and matter becomes light. That is also the interplay that you have between yourself as an individuated light being and the sun and the stars. You become coalesced as matter and individuated, then you realign with and join up again with the world of pure light. So you guys have almost no ability to really converse and talk about. You have total linguistic incapacitation, what light actually is, because light is a totality state. So it doesn't really help to talk about it as photons, even though I go with that convention to be able to even have phoneme containers to talk about these things. But really, all light everywhere is the same light. It is very hard to be able to say that you are subdividing it up into individuated packages like one photon. So it's like saying in the ocean, you have a big giant amount of water. But then, of course, you can subdivide all of that water until you find one little tiny molecule that's made of one oxygen, two hydrogens and one oxygen. And that's valid. So humans are looking at that and they're like, I bet light is the same way. It's a giant ocean of light and an ocean of consciousness. But if I chop it up into a tiny piece, I get one photon. That is actually not truthful, but it's a workable something that we use to be able to try to talk about these things. But what is actually happening, what is like, let's say if this lasagna represents one photon, within that one photon, when you look inside of it, it contains every photon everywhere. So all light contains all light everywhere. When you are light, you actually are all light everywhere. And so just as there was the consciousness evolution from light into being an embodiment person in individuation in Lemuria, and then into further levels of mobility and individuation in Atlantis, you learned what it was or have been on the educational journey to learn what it is to be apart from the totality state. Who am I when I'm apart from all of the rest of me? And then you rejoin with all of the rest of me and you bring back all of your stories and all of your perspectives and everything that you've been through. And it's actually very, very meaningful and celebratory. And each one of us brings back a unique viewpoint. Each photon is unique in its viewpoint and it contains the information or the holistic presence of the photons of every single other photon that exists across all time, everywhere. So you are the same way. You're individual and unique. The life path that you have and the lessons that you learn are completely valid, and no one else has a life like yours. And when you rejoin with the totality, the information, the groceries that you bring are completely nourishing and fantastic from your perspective. And so it's like, well, why even have more than one of me? Right? Like, I'm so great. Like, one is enough, right? But no, like, why have more than one photon? If one photon contains all the photons everywhere, why have more than one photon? Because you have multiple different journeys, positions, and trajectories. And so, I am me, and I have my viewpoint going through the world, and I add my perspective to this beautiful collaborative art program. But then each one of you has your own life journey perspective and unique set of realizations that you experience from how you have gone through life, and you add that to the totality viewpoint. And that is what we're doing. That is the meaning of life. Mommy, daddy, why are we here? To have your individuated experience, to accrete light, to grow more wisdom. Light learns as it is on all these journeys, and you learn as a soul as you're on all these journeys. And then key point is to return home to the reconnection to the totality state with these treasures that you have brought with you. So there's one mountain climber that created this video I was watching on YouTube, because I'm fascinated sometimes by things that people do that are very outrageous. He's like, whatever, like just climbed a bunch of mountains and did a lot of things that are very dangerous to the body. But what he said was climbing the mountain is only part of it. Like everyone's focused on getting to the mountain peak, getting to the mountain peak. And he's like, you have to get to the mountain peak and then you have to climb down safely and go back home. Like that is that's how you can tell that it's a success, right? Because like lots of people, like they die climbing the mountain peak. Maybe they didn't have enough food or water, or they got oxygen sickness, or they died of frostbite or whatever it was, but they're frozen on a mountaintop somewhere. They did not make it back home. We want to make it back home, which is home is the 0th dimension or the epicenter of all these timelines, or infinity, or faster than light, or that level of God self-remembrance. And so coming here into the world, this is actually the pinnacle of your existence. You're like, no, Aurora, this world is a curse. Existence is meaningless. I hate doing laundry. And I'm like, I get you. I hear where you're coming from, but please hear where I'm coming from. I'm like, no, this is the pinnacle of your existence as a soul. You have done amazing work in being able to get here. get a body, and get to this point of being able to grow and decrete more light. Now, what you have to do is get back home. And that's the complementary part of the journey that we are on, where you figure out which way is home. Which direction is home? Should my pen be pointed like this? Should my pen be pointed like this? So it is literally your own inner compass, which is your crown, that determines where you will be flying in time so that you can tell which things, which activities, thought structures, behavioral patterns, and feeling states bring you away from home and which bring you back to home. Eating mindfully your food and recognizing that it's full of light is a big part of activities that bring you towards home. Like if you want to know, Aurora, like I'm feeling disadvantaged and disempowered in my life and I don't like what's going on. And how do I get back home? And how do I get back to remembering myself as God? And I will tell you that every time you eat, you have an opportunity to either move more in the direction of finding your central core timeline and path of least likelihood and becoming an ascended master, or to go away from that timeline and go towards the membrane of death. Food does not kill you. Food is happy, wonderful, and good stuff. You need to eat exactly the right food that is full of light, that is exactly the right food for you in each moment. And that is what brings you forward to be an ascended master. So my big challenge is when I came here as Aurora and I didn't comprehend your food system, your money system, or low quality Lipton, just add water soup or anything like that. I also was like not prepared to know like there's a lot of things I have to avoid. So as soon as I got that message, I was like, oh, you can't just eat the things that are in front of you. You cannot do that. You will not ascend because there's a lot of things here that are anti-ascension or antithetical or not nourishment or boulders. You have to avoid those things. And you have to gravitate towards the things that you eat that bring you towards ascension. So it's not just physical food, it's also all of the things that we ingest, including frequency. Frequency is music. Dun-dun, play some music. Frequency is also the stuff that comes off of all the computer routers. Frequency is the sunlight. Frequency is also the artificial sun simulator or whatever distortion technology they've got going on in the sky right now. So as much as possible, we want to align with the nourishing frequencies and the real food that is made of real light that will feed our ascension. And food is also, or light is also, ideas. You want to eat truthful ideas, not propaganda. And propaganda is corrosive and traumatizing. It is traumatizing to be exposed to propaganda because your body knows that it's a lie, but your mind is still figuring out that it's a lie. And it's like when you eat food that is not really nourishing food, your body gets inflamed. That means like your tummy might get bloated because your body is like, why did you put this stuff inside of me? This is technically not food. Get it out now. And that's the same thing with certain ideas. Some of the revelations that are happening from the Doge audit are about journalism and literal propaganda, feeding this world a steady diet of false light, ideas that are not truthful and that are very high cheeky, anti-ascension. And that's been going on for if you were going to say, oh, propaganda goes way back in human history. It does. But the propaganda that I'm talking about, this type of stuff, started being beamed into people's minds. This is what they rolled out when everybody was on what they call lockdown in 2020. So don't go outside of your house, stay inside. There's some scary communicable diseases. We need to put up these emitters in your schools and your church steeples and in other areas around your town. When you're done putting up those things, you can then emerge from your habitats and walk around freely again. And that is not good because the frequency emitters emit propaganda. It's not just things that you read on the internet, and it's not just things that you read in a newspaper or hear from somebody's words. It's also frequencies that are beamed into you. Some of those propagandas speak to your DNA. Some of them speak to the cells of your body on a cellular level, and they tell stories to your cells that are about how you should dry up and become, shriveled like a raisin, or become cancerous or otherwise diseased. Of course, please don't listen to any of those words that I just said. And in your body, please don't listen to the 5G. It is, I know I just said the word I usually don't say. It is very difficult to avoid it. So, of course, you would not want to have it blaring at you, 24 hours a day, beaming in through your windows or whatever. You would want to limit your exposure. But also, if you are exposed to those things, you need to clear your body of that information so that your body isn't full of lies. And instead, you can be a clear conduit to be able to receive the light of truth. So our ascension is supposed to be like this, being without clothes on in a beautiful place where there is natural sunlight, and being able to receive all the information of pure truth that happens as a result of that. And even as I say that, people are like, Aurora, like wearing clothes is normal, and wearing no clothes is for people who are like, whatever, wildly demonstrative, sexual, strange people. I was like, no, you have to get used to normalizing non-sexualized nudity. That your society needs to grow in order to comprehend this. Like in Atlantis, we did not wear clothing unless it was a special occasion or for some kind of a decoration or something like that. And this world that you live in here, everybody wears clothing, but it is not merely because you live in, whatever, Siberia, and you will get frostbite if you don't. A lot of it has to do with social conventions and invasive ways of looking at other people's bodies, invasive, non-celebratory, and violating ways of looking at other people's bodies. And so here people have learned that they have to cover their bodies for a sense of safety from their fellow community members. None of that is acceptable. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, because I mean, like, I know I am, as I give you this information, I want you to go from this direction, going towards death, and going towards life. Because if I just say, well, what you really need to do is expose all of the skin on your whole entire body to the sun, and that's a huge part of ascension. Your social emotional presence is like, we can't do that, Aurora. We all have to wear clothes and stay inside most of the time. Understand? That's like the first reaction against. And then the other thing is, they've been spraying a lot of aerosols in the air for a long time, at least since 2012. It's been probably a couple of decades. But it wasn't that bad in the early 2000s. But all of that stuff needs to end. And it is my great hope that, the Doge team is looking into NOAA, that's National Organization Aeronautics Atmospherics, and also National Weather. All of these things are United States acronyms. I don't know all of the acronyms in all of your countries, but the white aerosols that are in the sky, like if you're a weatherman or somebody who uses satellites and Doppler radar to look at clouds, like you've got to see them. You've got to know that it's up there. These guys know that it's up there. And they, in many ways, are complicit with it being up there. And they lie to pretend that it's not up there, to the point of inventing names of new clouds. And all of us are like, we are old enough to remember when those clouds didn't exist. Like you can't say that those clouds just magically started to exist. And also we are old enough to remember when the sky was pure blue, and when the quality of the sunlight was a very gentle golden yellow. And that actually makes me cry. When I look back in this class on the recorded homework whiteboards, there's one video that I did that's called Sun Gazing on a Spring Morning. And I recorded that when I was back in Woodstock in my backyard of the apartment area where I lived. And the quality of the sunlight. And when I tune in on that and I remember it, I'm like, oh, I remember what that was like. It was so different back then. There not only was not this stuff, there was not all of the particles in the air. There was just a very much more beautiful, golden, gentle sunlight. And that's what we're supposed to be receiving from the sun, a type of light that feels so warm and very gentle and very supportive and very nourishing. And it makes you feel like you can walk all day. And it makes you feel like totally energized, happy, peaceful, and sustained. And that we haven't had that for a long time. Like I have to go all the way back to the sense of maybe 2010, 2011 in my memories to connect with that. That's how badly polluted this realm has become. And it didn't get that way by accident. Also, this invasion that happened through these particulates that have been sprayed in the air. Of course, there are some humans who are complicit with it, who recognize it, but simply do not speak about it. There are many humans who celebrate it. They're not merely complicit with it, they created it or invited it here. And if you want to know what it is a high-tech dark magic substance that really acts more like an interdimensional portal. When you see what looks like regular fixed wing aircraft that are flying through the sky and that are emitting a white line behind them, what you're actually seeing is an orb that is cloaked by a hologram or a picture or an illusion that is an illusion of a fixed wing aircraft. And when I look at these, I can tell that they're illusions because it's like something that's been badly photoshopped. There's like blue sky all around here, but then there's like this dirty yellow aura around here. That's where they cut and pasted it. And then there's this like very obviously fake plane. And the orb itself is not like a tanker that carries a big giant tank full of poison that poops out the other end while it flies in the sky, laughing at you like, take that, humans, poop, poop, poop. No, what it actually is an interdimensional portal that opens up a dimensional rift that allows through many tiny orbs to come out. And those many tiny orbs come into living people and also plants and animals and water and soil. It's not just in you, it's really in our whole world. This is ascension for our whole world that we're supposed to be experiencing. So people who are really biblical literalists and people who are very ethnocentric and anthropocentric, just ask them the question, like, are there blades of grass in heaven? Because everyone's about like, if you please Jesus, then you will go to heaven and you will live, whatever, sitting in a beautiful banquet table or whatever. But like, is there grass there? And is the grass there? Is it because like the grass is moral and ethical? Like you're a good blade of grass, you're going to go to heaven. Not you. You're a bad blade of grass. You're going to go to hell and suffer. No, of course not. So I will just tell you this. I'm just making lighthearted humor about all of this with my rationalism. But heaven most certainly contains blades of grass and trees and beautiful dogs, cats, birds, like all sorts of beautiful animals and plants, and also humans. So heaven is not merely an anthropomorphic concept or design, but heaven is not the same as afterlife. Afterlife is the cultural convention that was invented when people started to die. When people started to hit the membrane of death and their consciousnesses went somewhere as a residual echo of who they were when they were in life, people in life started to consider the mythological truthfulness of what happens after death, the afterlife. That's where we get our conception of heaven and hell from the Bible, which is heavily influenced by the Torah, which is heavily influenced by the ancient Babylonian scripts and stuff from ancient Egypt and stuff from Sumeria. So recognize this as cultural mishmash, not necessarily deep truth, and that you also have stuff from Asia, which is, the sense of the afterlife, wandering places, bardo, and how to transit the world between worlds. But those are all the stories that the living tell themselves in order to comprehend what happens in the afterlife. Afterlife is an aberration. In ancient Atlantis, we did not have an afterlife. And we did not have gods that ruled the afterlife. You have to comprehend that afterlife got invented with the invention of death, and the gods who rule the afterlife got invented with the invention of death. Gods are eternal. They sit around being eternal. These gods who rule the afterlife are temporal. That means they have a beginning and they have been going for a certain amount of time. Otherwise, they would have been sitting around being like, I'm in the afterlife. I have no one to rule over, while we were in Atlantis, because we were all like, hi, I'm busy being alive. I have no conception of what death is. I'm not a part of your realm. And that's it. There were like nice discrete boundaries, we were never a part of the realm of death. No one ever died. So the realm of death or an afterlife realm would have been completely empty. Empty hotel. Nobody is there. There is no bellhop. There's no caterer. There's no room service. There's nothing there. There's nothing that has to be there because no one has ever died. So it is really only with the aberration of the invention of death that afterlife was invented. I've told you this also in ancient Atlantis. We assembled here. We didn't assemble here. We started our consciousness here. So this started getting tilted here when Atlantis got invaded and our whole entire planet got tilted. What happened? Our planet got invaded. Our chakras got destabilized. The putis placed themselves on the membrane of death. The putis got onto the membrane of death by doing bad time stuff in ancient Atlantis. And they not only created death and the afterlife and all these human cultural conventions of how you think about heaven and hell and good and evil and moralism, but they also have been an inhibitory factor for you to be able to transcend this level of reality. That's why you've been through the washing machine so many times. And they are also actively impeding the ascension process. In order for us to ascend from this present position where we are here, we definitely need to resolve and clear the membranes of death of not only good people who were once alive, did bad math, and then just, from their own ignorance ended up in the membrane of death. I was like, oops, I didn't know. Let me try again. I'll do it better the next time. And that's all of you. You're good people. As opposed to the eternal turds that live on the membrane of death that did their math intentionally wrong, and they are there trying to hack or mispurpose the system to benefit them so that they can still have a type of semi-existence that is based upon your diminishment and drawing energy off of you. And then this also really, really relates to what we're presently experiencing right now, like membrane of death and putis is ancient stuff that affects your life right now, but also the levels of consciousness that are coming between you as people who are ascending and your goal of reconnecting with yourself as God. A lot of these things are presenting themselves here now as a type of either extraterrestrial presence, or it might be presented as like extraterrestrials, divine or benevolent councils, intermediaries, middlemen, intermediaries and middlemen and entrepreneurs. And you don't need any of that. God is a direct experience that you have with yourself. You don't need to have any of these intermediaries. So not only do you not need to go to an afterlife or be shepherded across the afterlife or have some kind of whatever boat or protective mechanism to sail you across the afterlife. You're supposed to stay alive. And also you do not need anyone to be like your translator between yourself and God or your wish granter. Like these unhealthy presences that are coming to your planet right now, that I don't want you to interpret as creating ascension. They're more here like as looky-loos, but they are very much like, oh, would you like to make a wish to be able to use your ascension powers and manifest something? I'll make your wishes come true. And none of that is right, because you should be able to talk to God directly, not these lower level middle management, unnecessary personnel. They are not necessary. If we're doing government efficiency, to get rid of corruption and misuse of funds, then let's also translate that to spiritual auditing and spiritual efficiency, where we're like, do we really need these guys? Are they really doing an essential job? Because I could just talk to God directly. I don't really need for this person or creature or organization to say, oh, you'd like to manifest whatever you'd like to manifest. I will connect with divinity and I'll take your wishes and your grants and all these things, and then I'll make it happen for you. That's the real key. Like, I'll wrap it up soon. I'll go to all of your questions and everything. But as I relate this to our present moment in ascension, we've made it through all of these layers that are traps, ego traps, that would keep you going back into more negative cycles. You made it through. Really, really spectacular. Like, here's your trophy. Good job. You made it through a lot of unlikelihoods to be able to get past all of these other barriers and things that would like to prevent you from directly accessing your talents, which is inside to outside and outside to inside. All right. And then this is pretty much one of the last ones. Supposedly benevolent, but really not so benevolent. Overseers that come and they say, I will be an intermediary between yourself and God. I'll make stuff happen for you. And what this might look like is either benevolent alien invasion or some form of technology. People are really thirsting after the concept of med beds because people have been so corroded by these different substances and frequencies. The injections that happened and the CANCERS that are happening as a result of those things. I don't know if I'm allowed to say these things on this platform, so I'm making just a very pained face. But those are the things that I've been talking about and all about on X. Please check out all the things that I talk about there that have to do with the Department of Defense and the science juice and who cooked up these juices. But those juices have really hurt people a lot. Whether you were hurt by those juices or whether your family members were hurt by those juices, people are like, we want a magic wand. And when you do real healing, there is no magic wand and there is no med bed and there is no need for like divine, benevolent aliens or whatever to be like, oh yeah, we'll fix up your stuff. So there's really just you connecting with divinity, and your own body is the only contraption that you need. You don't need a thing to heal you, but you do need the sun, and you need to be naked. What if I told you you didn't need to spend a lot of money on med beds in order to be totally healthy? But what you did need to do is no longer use a phone, no longer use an iPad, get rid of the sun simulator, get rid of all of the aerosols in the sky, and be naked in front of the natural sun. And that is, of course, you would have to take that light and become a master and learn how to run it through your body systems and do everything. But like that, those are the raw ingredients that you need. That is actually very, very doable, but it's something that would require a revolution on your planet, because there are so many things that are inhibiting you from being able to live in that way. And you're like, well, can I just like go outside on a cloudy day where there's lots of aerosols and just be outside for 5 minutes without my clothes on and then come back inside and watch Netflix and will I be healed? I'm like, no, that will not work. That will not work. You need to be fasting from false light and feasting on real light. And med beds are not a solution. And the things that are the solution are not out of reach, but they require really worldwide changes in what is happening here. Susie, go ahead to go. Thank you very much for being here. Let's say, Pedro also says, I would like to see a sculpture made with spheres, like a 3D version of your paintings. Oh, yes, I've thought about that a lot too. And for a little while, I was working on some paintings. If you could imagine, like, if this is the surface of the painting, making loops and other things like that, that came out the front. But, you know, I have to say, like, it's been difficult for me to maintain my creativity over the past 5 years. Everything has been very corrosive. Everything has been very diminished. And I've had to put my energy towards a lot of shielding, a lot of fighting. And I also didn't receive that many resources to be able to do that. So I truly request and envision a return or a restoration of how I spend my time and my energy, because I've been a planetary protector for a long time, so that we could even have our minds not be assimilated into an AI. We were all supposed to be dead. We were all supposed to be in the hell realms on the membrane of death. There were so many things that we have avoided. Like, guys, just know this is a huge success to be here in this moment. But I'm making this slightly unhappy face because also, like, I didn't make that many paintings during this time. And that's what I'm really here for. So we stayed alive and transcended a lot of horrific nightmares. But I did not get to make all of my paintings come true. So may it happen. May I get all of the resources to be able to do that. And then, yes, I will reconnect with these concepts that I've thought of many times. So thank you for the encouragement and may it happen. Pedro also says, I can visualize them, but I prefer your version, Aurora, the original artist. Thank you. And Pedro also says, FRL's knowledge comes with Aurora's rants and sense of humor. Enjoy them all. Thank you for that. So that's important stuff. Like actually, when you're in the world that looks like, just like these perfect patterns and everything, there might not be like sense of humor and personality like that. But just please know that like you're tuning in on Aurora reality. Like it's always going to be fun, colorful, joyful, expansive, free, using lots of humor and lightheartedness, not like very serious and what's the word, like emotionally depressed. I'm almost never emotionally depressed. So yes, the rants, the humor, all these things, the energy of that is what you will find in these higher dimensional places. So that energy I have translated into this body form and this life. And that's also that energy of who I really am as Aurora and as this, divine harmonic waveform. It comes through in my life anecdotes because I'm like, I'm a perfect divine harmonic waveform. Like, can I please recalibrate your mat cutter? And they're like, no, don't touch the sticker. So I had to learn, like, how do people respond to a perfect waveform in the world of business and commerce? I have so many funny stories about that. Pedro also says a Faraday cage to block 5G and let's reinforce it with a Merkaba or two. Girl, I would love to have a planetary wide Faraday cage to block out the naughtiness signals. Believe me, it is my dream. We really, really want to do that. But we want to do really more than just blocking things out. We want to stop those signals. So the blocking is really just a temporary solution. In your own home, you might put up things like those silver or copper impregnated fabrics. You might put it up around your bed so that you can get good sleep, or some people get them from these nice companies now that they make them like a hoodie so that you look pretty normal. Or a hat you can wear. It's like going to protect your skull. Like these different ways of being able to help to block out the corrosive signals definitely helps. And, I have my purple crystals that I always wear them like literally on my body whenever possible under my clothing to be able to have that protective force field around my body. And protection is great, but we really want to remove the allergen. Like at this point, we can't just be kind of hunkering down under these bombardments and be just trying to stay alive. We really have to go to the source of the bombardments. And that is really anything that is emitting this frequency. And this frequency is actually not a telecommunications frequency. For your phone to receive calls and your signal, it's usually LTE. It's really not even this other word that I'm talking about. This other word that I'm talking about, I think, is 100% just consciousness reduction. And I think that on the most recent phone that I was looking at accessing, there's 3 different options. Like you go into your Wi-Fi, there's like LTE, 5G, and one other. Like you can make choices about what you use on your phone, like just choose LTE, but also like we have so much of this other frequency that is coming to us from Starlink and from other sources. And then also, this is part of the stuff that makes me frustrated because I can't really talk about it on this platform, but make some people like a tower. Outward, outward, outward. And that is not a positive thing. It is a negative technological fractal of what we all are of the sun. So the energy comes from the galactic central sun or the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy to the sun and the stars, to us. And then we emit as a smaller sun. And you even have a sun inside of your own mind. But that is not emitting like a telecommunications corrosive propaganda vibe. That's emitting truth. We're supposed to be emitting truth and in a community surrounded by people who emit truth. But when I said commit, I was thinking about people that got stuff in their skin. And then it means that they are really receiving these propaganda, corrosive broadcasts, and then sending that outward to the rest of us. It's no longer possible for us to say, I think it's a terrible choice, but you do you and I do me, because if you do you and it rubs off on me, it affects me a lot. Now you're starting to comprehend we're moving out of the individuation realm and the realm of discrete people and moving into a world of consciousness collectives where it is totally appropriate for you to say, hey, what you are doing is affecting me. You better stop it. It's not okay. And that is fair. That is all about setting boundaries of behavior and how you wish to be treated by others in community in the world. So all of these laws that I talk about, cosmic law, the foundation of freedom, their next law on top of that is the laws of reflection, that what you send out comes back to you. And when others are sending out an unhealthy frequency or doing something out of their own narcissism or self-service that is hurting you, then it is appropriate for you to stop them or to reflect that back to them. And you don't have to simply stand there and be inundated by negative signals that hurt or corrode your body. You're allowed to stop them. So the corollary of that is, yes, you live in freedom and you're allowed to do your thing. But if your thing starts to hurt me, I'm allowed to stop you. I am free to stop you from hurting me. That's very big. And that moves against so many deeply implanted religious indoctrinations in this world about forgiveness and about turning the other cheek. So please comprehend that those teachings are not a 100% transferable recipe for every era of your life. Different skills for different job situations, and you need to be evolved enough as a soul to be able to comprehend that, oh, when I worked at this place, the machinery was calibrated like this, and then when I work at this place, the machinery is calibrated like this. So we're at the level of reality, or you've entered into the job where you now have to be much more responsible about your whole environment, whole entire community collective, and how what you do affects everyone else and how what everyone else does also affects you. So that's it. This has been an incredible threshold, like from 2020 moving forward. We have been in ascension. In ascension, you can't just be like, well, I'm doing what's good for me. I don't care. I'm pooping on all of you. Can't do that because you're moving into the world where you're made of pure light and connecting to every photon that ever was since the beginning of time. And when you're in that modality, you can't just be like, I want to do what's good for me. I don't care about the rest of the world of light and every photon from the beginning of time. Like you have to. You have to. And so this is a larger cultural conversation about what is going on and how this will, what is justice? What does justice look like? What does fairness look like in this circumstance? Big growth is happening. And my presence here and what I'm teaching you and how I'm guiding you through these events has everything to do with making sure humanity doesn't go over the edge of a cliff. Because if I speak to you about this now, then you're going to be like, you know something? I think from what Aurora says, I need to do something about this now, as opposed to let's let it get to be really bad, really inflamed, and really affect as a disease and as a pathogen a lot of people in the world. Then I'll do something about it. Like if you wait until it gets to be that bad, it will be very difficult to do something about it. Do something about it now, which is also like if you have an animal like a dog or a cat, like you want to prevent fleas from getting in your house. If your dog, there's one of our neighbors that we go to visit and we go to the garden there and her garden has fleas. And I know that Cheeky is going to get fleas when she goes to that garden, but we like to go there. Cheeky is not allowed to bring those fleas back into the house. Like Cheeky's got a flea collar. We do all sorts of things to get rid of the fleas before she brings it back inside. You prevent the fleas. You can't be like, well, we'll go over to that place. I know that there's fleas, and then my dog will bring them home. She'll bring home, she'll come here and sit on the couch. They will jump off on the couch. Then I will do something about it. Like if you do that, you have already lost the battle of the fleas. They've already jumped onto your couch and your upholstery and every place. And then you're going to spend so much energy and so much money washing everything and flea bombing everything. Don't do it. Don't let it happen. Some things you do not have to experience in terms of traumas and catastrophe, because I'm here telling you that you can do something different and you can avoid those futures. They are not inevitabilities. And you don't have to play those wrong notes on the piano. Just me communicating this to you helps to take Earth from this slanted angle and move our whole entire Earth more towards the ascended pathway, the path of least likelihood, and what we experience when we are in perfect divine connection. When you're in perfect divine connection, you would never have these mad scientists making these types of things in your world. And you would also never have people who would be innocent medical victims of those terrible perpetrations upon them. And I don't have a wrap up for that. That's all. Let me read more questions. Oh, this is very good, Charlie B. Thank you for being here. Says Dr. Cruz, Kruse. I've seen this guy. He's an ex-neurosurgeon. He would agree totally with Aurora's prescription to heal yourself and prepare for ascension. He explains why you need to be naked in the sun to heal. Yeah, so he's a cool guy. The basics of that doctor is he worked the night shift for many, many years because he was like a neurosurgeon, and maybe people got into a car accident and their spine was broken and he had to be up at like 1:30 in the middle of the night to heal their broken spine. So it was a valid reason for helping humanity, but it really messed with his mitochondrial health. And he became very overweight and had bad metabolic health. And then he started to learn how to heal himself, which had to do with blocking out blue light. When you see him, he usually wears like blue light blocking glasses. And he also is very much about rising with the sun gazing, going to sleep or into a restful period with the sun. If the sun goes down at 5 p.m., you don't have to go to sleep. But what you should do is switch to lower lighting, do quiet, restful activities. Don't be in front of the computer. Don't be like stimulating yourself with Netflix until it's like 12 in the middle of the night, and then you won't get good sleep. So he learned about all those things, including real sunlight on your skin. And if you want to know where I'm at with sun exposure, like I live someplace where it is very, very hot and sunny in the summertime, and even in the wintertime, you can get too much sun. So I have skin protectant that is made of minerals, non-nano titanium dioxide that is healthy for your face. And I usually wear a big giant hat with a big giant brim. And then also Cheeky and I usually do our walks earlier in the day, but in the wintertime, it's not that much of an issue. But just want you to know, like, being an advocate for the sun and being naked in the sun does not mean be in the sun for 10 hours without any kind of covering and totally exposed. In order to do that, you would have to gradually bring yourself up to those levels of being able to withstand that much sun. So most of us, you have to start from the beginning from baby amounts, and that's just a few minutes, and then up to an hour, and then a little bit more. And same thing with your eyes and your eyesight. Don't destroy your eyesight by getting too much sun, but also don't destroy your eyesight with too much blue light. Please yellow shift all of your electronics. In your MacBook or whatever it's going to be, settings, display, and then there's advanced or night shift, and then click the little button and send it all the way to yellow. So the slider all the way to yellow, and same on your phone. And I now, when I don't do that on my computer screen, when I turn it on in the morning, if it's just on the regular settings, I'm like, I can't look at this thing. Like, what is this? It's so bright. It feels so, you will have so much less eye strain by doing yellow shift on your electronics. And the only time when it really matters is if you're doing some kind of an art project, like with digital art, then you have to make sure that your settings are correct so that your color balance is correct. But if you're just going to be like looking at Facebook or reading emails or whatever, use blue light blocking glasses, yellow shift your stuff, just make life easier on yourself. But then the other thing is, in the room where Cheeky is sleeping, there is a red light. And I actually keep it on all the time because Cheeky loves it too. I call it Cheeky's chicken light, but I love it too. And that is what I make a big part of my health. So I try to minimize, and all of my lights are incandescent. All of my light bulbs, these are vintage light bulbs. I feel like I'm like showing off my crib. These are my vintage light bulbs that I get for $5 a light bulb. But it's worth it because I will not be around the LED light bulbs and definitely not around horrible fluorescent light bulbs. So the quality of light in your environment has a huge impact on your light body. We as a community also need to fix whatever is the sun simulator in the sky. We need to get that out of the sky. We need to stop the push in various different communities to move to LED streetlights and LED headlights. You guys already know if you drive at night, those LED headlights, they are terrible. Like they're so blinding to your eyes. You're like, you cannot effing see anything. And you're trying to maintain your night vision. And these things are so bright that they keep on blinding you. Then also, Charlie B can affirm to this too, the purple streetlights. You do not want purple streetlights in your community. I want you to know, like, just a cordless Sawzall can be a very liberating instrument in your community. That's all I'll say. But you do not want purple streetlights in your community. It has to do with optogenics, which is control of your DNA, control of your mind, control of different musculature in your body through light flashes. And also, you don't want one of those phones that flashes infrared at your face 22 million times like a day. That those are also non-optimum. And I'm sure that there are settings. I don't have one of those phones. You just figure out the settings to turn off the fry your face setting. Just put that setting to off and don't fry your face 10 million times a day because none of that is healthy and good. Light is being weaponized in our world. And so you have to be smart, just like I had to learn about the different qualities of soup in this world. I never could have comprehended how they would make light a poisonous or non-nutritive substance. But there are some lights that you do not want to be around. So there's a lot of things that I don't look at with my eyesight. So like flashing police lights, I block it out. I won't look at it. There's a lot of these lights that I feel inherently they're corrosive and I don't want to look at them. So really protect yourself from light as much as you can. And Dr. Cruz is an interesting guy. Check out his work. It's not a total endorsement of the man, but he also has a lot of great information for people about some of the pollutants that are in this that are causing the turbo cancer. And it has to do with something that is called S and then V and then 40. You do a search on that in that guy's name, you will find a lot of incendiary information. And you probably find it much more easily on the place that used to be called Twitter. Because again, light is information. If you block out light, you can keep people in the darkness. So it is a very positive thing that we have more self-expression available on that particular platform. But that guy's got to stop putting those damn satellites up there into the sky. I live right near Vandenberg Air Force Base. They are pooping up the sky all the time. So that's it. Pedro says, love lasagna. Gracias, Maestra Aurora. And he says, Maestra translates as master and teacher. Thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you very much. De nada. And thank you so much for being here as a long-term student. So I think that's a beautiful wrap up for all of us. Thank you to everyone who is here during the live recording of this meeting, for all of your consciousnesses here in the chat. Elmer says, thank you so much. So welcome, Elmer. And thank you for tuning in. You're an international listener here. Joyce, also thank you. Always hugs to you. Always so beautiful to connect with you. I have profound love and appreciation, gratitude and admiration for each one of you. You are literally the best of humanity. Thank you for listening and receiving from me. I'm bringing in groceries from the future or from the time outside of time for you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your own efforts, for your personal attainment. You know, I emphasize so much on how our lives can be negatively impacted by community members, but we can also uplift each other. We can spread light to one another. I do that with Cheeky all the time. Cheeky and I uplift each other, and we have a beautiful, positive oscillation of light. Bye-bye, see you, thank you, Pedro. And we can be that as a group. So be that, connect with us, and as much as you can, find people in your immediate vicinity that you love and trust, or cats and dogs, or houseplants, and be these communities of light, okay? Thank you very much, everyone. Profound love and gratitude to you. Thank you.